Welcome to the Zoning Board of Appeals public hearing, Thursday, January 27th, 2022. Can I have a motion to open the meeting?
So moved.
Luke, can you second?
I second that.
And all in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. So our first order of business is to welcome Alex Wallach, our new village planner. And thank you, Alex, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
We thank the trustees also for recognizing the need for a planner and answering that need with a capable individual. So let's start with a decision, which is case number 3120, 84 Fordham Road, GC Southampton LLC. Can I have a motion to accept the decision as written?
So moved.
And the second?
I second that.
Okay, all in favor of accepting the decision for 84 Fordham Road, case number 3120 as written, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Luke and Joyce, you are an aye?
Aye.
And I am an aye, so that is unanimous. And then we go to our first pending case, which is case number 3110, North Main LLC, 54 North Main Street. Jeff, can you provide us with some context on what we can do tonight and what we cannot do tonight other than hear the applicant?
Certainly. In this application, I believe that while there wasn't publication notice, my understanding is that there had been notice provided to the surrounding neighbors. There was a prior application that remains pending before the board. And the applicant, I believe, also wants to present an alternative application, which for ease of reference is seen in their most recent drawing, and which would involve creating a situation in which there would be an easement for the back property, which would allow for that property to exit onto the street to North Main Street, but they would be requiring a variance or seeking a variance in order to allow for that lot to have no technical frontage, if you will, because what they would have is an easement instead of ownership. What I believe the board could do tonight is let the applicant present, explain the circumstances, but then continue the matter over to make sure that there's further publication made. I've had the chance to speak both to Ms. Vale and then to Mr. Armentano, who I believe will be here tonight, to let them know of that concern.
Just to clarify the relief, there's no technical frontage. What's the required frontage according to the code?
I believe it's 25 feet required.
And what will be the width of the easement?
The width of the easement, as I'm looking at it, I believe is 25 feet, Chairman.
Is the applicant or their representative here to present?
Yes, I'll bring him in now. Okay, Mr. Armentano, you're in. If you could start your camera and your microphone.
1 second. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. My name is John Armentano. I'm an attorney with Farrell Fritz, 100 Motor Parkway, Hauppauge, New York. We are representing the applicant in this application. I am taking over for Liz Vale on this application, and I can explain and show the plans. If I can share my screen, I will do that. So make sure you can see what I have here. I'll just enlarge it. Oh, that's too big. Sorry, problem. So this is the application. Is it clear on the screen?
Good enough.
Okay, very good. This application has had some history with the board. As you may know, the concept here has been converted into a subdivision with a flag lot, which was an original preference to, as Mr. Blinkoff had said, to remove that issue. We are now providing a 25-foot easement, which you can see runs along the south side of the access point. So that reduces the amount of variances necessary for this application. As you know, it's a non-conforming lot. It is non-conforming uses on the lot as a result of some zone changes. What we are proposing, because of the yield of the property being 4 lots, and we did receive prior approval by the planning board for this 2-lot subdivision, the concept that we're proposing to you tonight is the easement access point, which then reduces the variance for that aspect. The proposal here is to take the woodworking shop in the back and convert that into a residential use, which is in conformance with the zoning code, and to allow the office building to remain on the frontage of North Main Street. The variances as listed would be then reduced, so there is no longer a 0-foot setback for the office building due to the easement not being considered, land itself, with a subdivision lot. So that variance is removed. The other variance, so this is the layout. I think it's pretty self-explanatory in a sense. I can obviously answer questions about that, but it is basically taking the flag out and making it an easement, and that's shown on these plans. I could show my other screen. There is also a pyramid variance that is requested due to an existing condition. So let me share that screen as well, just so you see that issue. Bring it to the next. If you can see that it's on its side, I don't know if I can rotate. I'll give it a shot. That's the rotation. Is that visible to you on your screens?
Yes.
So this is the sky plane bulk analysis that our engineers put together. That does show where we have a slight intrusion into the sky plane. As we know, this is an existing condition, and so what we are proposing will not change any issues with respect to new build. This is virtually just what has always been there since this property was constructed back in I believe it was the late 60s, early 70s. So that would be the other variance required to continue the use on site.
But I think if you go the easement route, you will not need this variance.
Oh, that's even better. And that's fine. Like I said, I've been brought up to speed rather quickly on this project. If that's how the code would relax, then I think this is just explanatory for what would have been a needed variance. And if no longer necessary, then we don't need to consider that. So I'll just bring back up.
Why is that? What's the reason for that?
Because they're not deeding to the front lot the
Anything?
property
Oh.
that provides the access to the second lot.
So it just is what it is. Is that what you're saying?
Well, yes, you would draw the pyramid line from the boundary line, which is further south.
Oh,
And so it wouldn't conflict with the.
Right, you're right. The sky plane wouldn't start at that location, right? The start of the sky plane would not start there. You're correct. Apologize for that. So I can bring back up the other plan, and then I can answer any questions that you may have.
So it's only for one residential lot back there,
That is correct.
back with the woodworking shop? I'm fascinated by it.
Yes, that's correct. What, if you can see my cursor, this building,
Yeah, no, I know, I see
Yep.
that.
it will become a single-family residence. From what I understand, it's, the applicant may actually live here. So it's a much lesser impact to the community and nothing will really change. We're actually bringing the property more into conformity, which would be, a good thing for a lot of reasons, and therefore diminish the need for any other variances. And, according to, state law, these are minimal impacts, and it's really just providing us with the right of access, which has always been, and this will be converted into a residence. The driveway will be removed and access will be provided along the easement right of way.
And the property's already zoned residential, is that correct?
That is correct, yes. So the existing nonconformities are reduced, and as I said, we're pre-existing nonconformity in the office building. So again, that will not change, and that nonconformity is not expanded at all, and it just remains as a grandfathered use.
Do any board members have any questions? Should we see, are there any members of the public who wish to be heard?
If you'd like to be heard on this application, please raise your hand. There are no hands, Chair.
So I'll make a motion to close case number 3110, 54 North Main Street for decision. Have a
Mr.
second?
Mr. Chairman, actually, I don't
Oh,
think
we
it will
can't
be closed because it
because
has
of
to
the
be
hearing.
noticed. I
I'm
would ask that
sorry.
it be continued over to the next meeting for notice to be published.
Yeah. So we'll adjourn for all purposes. Is that correct?
Yes, please.
Okay, so can I have a motion to adjourn for all purposes, case number 3110, 54
So
North
moved.
Main Street?
So moved.
And second,
Second.
and all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And, okay, so it's unanimous. We'll adjourn for all purposes. And we'll see you at the next public hearing.
See
Thank
you
you.
next time. Yep, thank you very much. Have a good night. Thank you.
So the next case before us is case number 3122, Todd Grossman and Tamara Carmichael, 93 David White's Lane.
Yes, Robert Fischetti is coming in.
Good evening, board members.
Hey, Rob.
How are you, Robert?
Hello, Jason Paremba, the architect, should be joining as well. If you can. check
Uh,
first. And-
Jason Thomas.
Yes.
Okay, he will be coming in.
It's okay. If it's okay, I'm going to share my screen. Okay. So, Jason here now.
Should be in here. Yes.
Jason, welcome, but you're muted.
Thank you. Good evening, board. Jason Paremba, good to see everyone.
So since the January 18 work session, Jason's office did a lot of work to consolidate the sort of site plan that was spread out over several pages into one page. Now, keep in mind that we, at the board's request, are showing a 14-foot by 32-foot variation. My client's preference is still the 16 by 28 variation, but at the board's request, we're showing both just so that you can see and compare. I also submitted, since the work session, a 2014 variance on 106 Pulaski, which is just down the street, showing a 15 by 30-foot pool set at 20.6 feet from North Woolley Street. So I just wanted to mention that. Otherwise, we included all of the the things requested. This yellow measurement here is the width of the as of right area, 10 feet 7 inches. That leaves us with, in the 16 by 28 version, a request of 5 feet 5 inches, which is a variance, or leaves us a setback of 33 feet 7 inches. A change of 2 feet, of course, on the 14 by 32, a request of 3.5 feet, and a total setback of 35 feet 7 inches. There will also be, as shown on the plan, screening. There's already a hedge there. And of course, the pool will have to be fenced in. So it will be shielded from the road. You know, the applicant, of course, hopes that you'll agree with them that the 2 foot difference between the 14-foot width and the 16-foot width, you know, the 2 feet makes a bigger difference to the applicant, I think, and they think than, you know, than to the public. A 14-foot wide pool is getting a little narrow. It starts to become, you know, they have kids, it's a safety issue and they're jumping in. It starts to get, you know, where I know my kids in my pool, when they jump, they seem like they're jumping right across to the other side. So preferably the 16, but you know, we did propose the 14 as well, so you can see the, you know, the comparison. Jason, I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
No, all the same comments. Hopefully the dimensions are clear. We enlarge them and show them all in the one drawing now. I was trying last meeting to simplify it by breaking it into different sheets, but we try to graphically show it so you could all see it together. And I think it's reading clearly now on this image here on their screen. So hopefully you guys can see it okay.
Good. Do any board members have any questions or concerns?
No.
I appreciate seeing the drawings clarified very much. And I must say that I think that the difference remains significant to me between the 14 or the 16 feet. It's a lot for this property.
Well, who said that we agreed on the 14 feet? I
don't think anybody said we agreed.
Oh, I didn't say that. I said the board asked to see it.
I don't think that's what you said, but okay.
I had done an analysis. I don't know if you have that diagram, Rob, of the context. It's 120, approximately 125 feet if you use the Google Earth and measure from the pool to the residences to the north, directly to the north, and then immediately to the east, you have the daycare center. Immediately to the south, you have a very large non-conforming barn structure, like right on top of the property. And then, my opinion, this is subjective only, the pool is shielded to the west by the proposed pool house and the proposed garage, which, you know, I liked your recommendations, but we brought those into 100% conforming. But it also does act as a nice buffer, in my opinion, to the adjacent property to the west.
Mr.
Rob,
Thomas,
sorry.
you know, we actually have to go by the law with the setbacks. So using Google Earth to tell us that something is so far away or close enough isn't really what this application is about, in my mind.
There was concern you had expressed, though, to noise to adjacent properties.
I hadn't.
So,
someone may have, but to
so
me,
it was expressed by the board on different occasions, you know, the noise and its effect on the adjacent property. So I was just trying to bring to attention that we're 125 feet if it's, let's say, the 16-foot pool. If it's 114, you'll add 2 feet to the residences to the north. And that's all I'm bringing attention to.
Thank you.
Rob, can we go back to the other property that you had highlighted in the beginning?
Oh, down the street, yes.
Mm-hmm. So there was a variance issued for this property?
Yes, 2014.
2014.
Yes.
Okay. And so for actually probably more of a request than this applicant is requesting?
Same size lot, a little over 10,000 square feet.
Okay. So does the precedent here, speak to anybody on the board?
I think every
Absolutely.
property has to be looked at, separately. Yes, it's a precedent. It's a while back now at this point. It's something to consider, but it's certainly not controlling.
It contributes to the character of the neighborhood. I mean, the neighborhood's not without pools that are close to the front yard. I mean, it's not breaking new ground. I mean, I do think the board is required to respect precedent. I mean, that's part of, the history of the board. It may not have been this particular board, but that it does establish a character of the neighborhood.
I think that the community has changed and that actually the board membership and the planning for the village, including the master plan and the wishes of the people who live here, has to be considered. A variance that was done a long time ago, to me, is just that. There are many examples of pools and tennis courts from like 40 or 50 years ago, but they don't really have bearing on what we're dealing with now, which is encroachment, properties that are crammed with buildings. I don't even know what the zoning was when you're giving us this example. I don't think, other than that you're showing it to us, which I recognize, I don't think it bears a lot of weight.
I understand that the board doesn't want to use prior decisions as the only benchmark, but again, it does add to the character of the neighborhood. This was only 7 years ago. The village has been had zoning in practice for 100 years. I don't think 7 years ago was quite that long ago, but I
What's the
respect the board's
date?
opinion.
Not 7 years ago.
14,
14, 22?
No, 24, 8 years ago, sorry.
It's okay, Rob, we certainly do take it into consideration. It's not a
Oh, yeah.
controlling factor.
I
And
understand.
I think what Susan was alluding to also was, as we all know, since this time, there have been new GFA laws, there have been new lot coverage laws, there's been a pyramid law that was put into effect. So the village has, and we're taking note of this, the village has taken some regulatory steps to regulate development more than they felt the need to do in the past. All that being said, it's a balancing question for us, and of course, we'll take that decision into consideration. What I think you might need to do is think about in this particular case whether a 14 by 28 pool would be something you would want. So you may want to provide that drawing, or you may opt, for providing only these two drawings and asking us to choose between the two. That's your decision. But I do think there's a little bit of a debate going on in the board as to the amount of variance that it might be willing to grant, if any. And a 16-foot wide pool, we do see smaller pools, may not make it, but that's for the applicant to decide.
Right. Well, that's why we proposed the 14. I had mentioned, I think in the December meeting, and I thought it seemed like it was something that the board found reasonable in general, was at the 42-foot or at the 14-foot width to push out to 32. I know Jason did the analysis. It's the 14 by 32 you see down here on the bottom is 109 square feet of relief, which is a big drop from the 16 by 28.
51, yeah, it's about 42 square feet less when you change it, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we've definitely done a lot to try to pare this application back. We at the board's suggestion, relocated the garage and the pool house and dropped those from the application. It's definitely a much narrower pool than we had originally proposed. The applicant's trying to do everything they can. Obviously, as we get closer and closer to the summer and construction deadlines and everything, time is important to them. But we like to think that the 14 by 32 would work, but that's up to you.
Yeah, we had felt any less, and having children as well, I have 2 young children, like, any less in width starts to be unsafe. I feel, if you went to a fully conforming pool at 10'7", you span, I'm 6'2", you span my arms out, it starts to be dangerous. It starts to be more of a,
Excuse me, are there, I don't believe that there is something called a fully conforming pool in the village code. Is there? There is not.
You had asked, it would be 10'7".
What would be, the fully
The width.
conforming pool?
Yes.
But the actual laws of the village should not prescribe the size of a pool, because I went through this in a completely different aspect. It's missing from the code, which would say there is a minimum. There is. no-
Understand that. You're correct. Yeah, there isn't a minimum size.
Okay, thank you.
Correct. Yeah, I
Also-
was thinking in
Just so
terms of
just so you
actual.
guys know, the other current application before us is a 12-foot wide pool. So I'm going to leave it up to you, Rob and Jason. I would recommend that you talk with your client and see if you want to submit a 14 by 28 pool. Otherwise, we can make a motion to close this for all purposes, subject to written submission, because I think we've certainly deliberated regarding this application. And I think otherwise you have done an excellent job in your presentation. It's clear. My question to you is whether you want to submit a drawing of a 14 by 28 pool.
Yeah, so 14 by 28. So decreasing the overall north to south dimension from 1432 to 14 by 28. That's your
Yeah.
suggestion, Mark?
Yes. Well, that's what we originally suggested, actually, is to change the width. And in exchange, Rob said, can we extend the length? And I think that we, as an option, want to ask you if you would also submit a 14 by 28 pool, that would be something that you would ask the board to approve.
Would the board be willing to give a sense of whether that would sort of a straw vote, if that would work, or if there's anything else, just for the sake of efficiency, if there's anything else that the board wanted to see, or if we just want to make sure that we're being conservative with our clients' time and resources and money and everything. So we've revised several times, which we're happy to do, to try to find the right fit. But if we came back with 14 by 28, I'm sure we would be coming back, fingers crossed, that's the last revision.
I'll open it to the board. Luke, do you want to weigh in, or Joyce, or Susan, or Julia?
I'm not willing to give up my rights. And I also would like to just say that I think it's our job for the pool house and the garage. The notion that we would grant a variance when you could actually do this within the guidelines of the zoning is commendable. That's what we do. So I think it's commendable that you actually picked up the ball and ran with it. But I don't know if we would have said, that's sort of our job, is not to have things that you could do legally, not give variances unnecessarily. So I think the onus was on us, and we did our job and you followed along. But that's just part of an application process. I'm not willing to say what I'm going to do because I really don't know.
I just ran the numbers, Mark, and if we reduce from the 32 to the 28, the overall ask for the variance reduces by 14 square feet. On the the red portion that's highlighted, it would go from 109 square feet down to 95 square feet. I don't know if that means anything. I'm just putting it out there just so you can hear the number.
Are any other board members willing to give any comment, just so we can get a better sense?
Sure. I think out of respect for the homeowner, it's time to move this application off our desks. I don't really think asking them to reduce the pool further is a good use of our time or necessarily fair to them or us. We know the size of the pool that they want. I don't really view our board as defenders of the code. That's the building department's job. I view our job as the realization that the code is not one size fits all. And when your property leaves you with a 10-foot 7-inch slot of space to build a swimming pool, I think this property fits that bill. And I'm ready to approve the larger pool for them. I'm happy to give my opinion. That's how I'll be voting on this. And I think we can't keep talking about this application anymore. The applicant has been very flexible. Susan is right. You asked for variance for stuff that you could have done complying, but not really. Like it made more sense maybe for those two buildings to be on access with the main house, and now they're not. That was a sacrifice on the applicant's part and the architect's part. So I think they've been very flexible. I think no one really loses by granting the application. I really, the neighbor to the north across the street has not voiced any concerns about it. I think this is an easy approval for us.
Rob, I don't know what more we can say than, we'll continue to deliberate. We're not going to decide tonight. I don't think asking for you to submit another drawing of 14 by 28 is going to require, very much time from Jason as an architect. So I don't think I'm asking a great deal, and I would recommend it, but you can decide what to do. And Luke, the one thing I would say is, just as far as a general philosophy, that I do think that the Zoning Board of Appeals has a responsibility to defend the integrity of the building code and the zoning regulations, that is our job. And that in light of fulfilling that responsibility and that job, one of the standards, in our 5-point test is to provide the minimum relief necessary that's feasible for the applicant, and it's one of only 5 tests that we have to go through to make sure that it's the minimum variance required, and I'm paraphrasing, of course, that is feasible for the applicant. So when applying that standard, if a 14 by 28 pool is feasible, we are mandated to apply that 5-point test. And so I think that's why I was asking for the 14 by 28. Yes, you'll have.
Why does the board exist then? Because couldn't the building department just say, well, the code says this is denied? Yes,
you're exactly right. They could say that, and we're an appeal from that, and we'll provide relief in certain cases. One of the guidelines that I follow is, and I think in this respect we're being somewhat liberal. Is there anything about the shape, topography, configuration of this property that requires relief? Not really. It's a rectangular property. It just has 2 front yards. There's nothing about the particular property that distinguishes it from other properties. And so that's why the board may be a little bit more conservative, because there are numerous properties that are rectangular in shape throughout the village. And what happens is that one after another property owner will look at this as they're looking at North Woolley and apply for the same variance relief. And when I highlighted that our responsibility is to protect the integrity of the zoning code, that's how we're doing it. Because little by little, you'll have everybody varying from the zoning code, in which case, why have a zoning code? Because everybody will have a pool that's less than 40 feet from the front yard. So anyway, it's a balancing. I don't mean to decide it. It's everybody will vote their own philosophy and their own mind, but I just wanted to offer the applicant an option because I'm not sure that
Sure.
a pool.
Well,
of this
Mark,
size
if I
will
could just,
carry the day.
let me respond to your 2 points there. 8 out of 10 lots of this size are going to be internal lots. It's a very small percentage that are these corner lots. And so I do see there being not a topographical thing, but a zoning code thing that seriously restricts this property. And, your concern seems to be that if we allow it here, then everybody's going to want it. But, 10 minutes ago, we were saying that the example up the street that Rob presented had no bearing on this application. So,
Oh, no, I
following
would never
that
say it has
logic,
no bearing. It certainly has some bearing.
But it was
You
a
know, but
long time ago.
I don't want to listen. I don't want to belabor it. I mean, I understand what you're saying, Luke. I really do. But there are numerous corner lots with 2 front yards. And if somebody wants to revise the zoning code, they should. But it's specifically written in the zoning code that corner lots have 2 front yards for a reason. I mean, there's rationale to that. So I'm just trying to strike a balance here. But why don't we,
I hear you.
Rob, what
The
would you like to
zoning board
do?
of
Would you
appeals
like
isn't gonna-
would you like us to close it for all purposes, subject to written submission?
Well, I mean, I think if we don't have, it doesn't seem like we're quite there. I know my client doesn't want to, find themselves at a dead end. I do think that there is a history of treating corner lots differently because the zoning code applies a little bit differently. But, I understand everyone's going to have a different take on that. If at this point we are just looking at one positive vote, then I think we would adjourn for all purposes to consider options.
Okay, so can I have a motion from the board to adjourn application case number 3122 for all purposes?
So moved.
And second,
Second,
and all in favor of adjourning?
aye.
Aye.
Luke, was that an aye to you? And then I'll vote aye. And so we're adjourned.
Thank you.
No, thank
Thank
you,
you for your
Rob.
time.
Thank you, Jason. So the next case is case number 3117, 104 Post Crossing. Jolie is the applicant here.
Yeah, yep. One moment.
Thank you.
Good evening. Linda Riley for the applicant.
How are you, Linda?
And I have Brian Brady here also. In between our last regular hearing, we submitted a revised plan that reduced the amount of variance relief that we're seeking because we moved the garage forward so that it would no longer require a rear yard variance, just a side yard variance. And we submitted a copy of a survey with a building envelope and the accessory and the principal building envelopes on it. So you could see that there really is no conforming location for a one-car garage on the property other than, well, there is no conforming location. So we've reduced the amount of reduced the variance relief we're requesting as much as possible. And I have today, if I can share my screen, a rendering that Brian did of the same garage that we proposed to you, submitted to you a couple of weeks ago, and you discussed at the work session. But I have a rendering that shows it next to the house, so you can see how it lines up and how it complements the house. If I can share my screen.
Are these the materials that were submitted today?
The plan, the
Yeah.
rendering was submitted today, yes. It's
Okay.
it's the same plan. But the rendering was submitted today, and that's because I didn't have the rendering until yesterday. It takes time to do these. And if you don't want to look at it, I understand, but it seemed to me it was better to get it in before rather than, not, but.
It's an illustration. It's not new information.
An
It's just-
illustration. It's not new information. It's exactly the same plan that we submitted, the same survey. It's just an elevation. This is the existing house. We've made no changes to the building itself. The plans were submitted at the last meeting. Although I will say, and I didn't put this, I will say that we are willing, the applicant is willing to remove the indoor shower from the bathroom. That seemed to be a concern. So although we haven't had time to draw up new plans that will show it without the bathroom, without the shower, the indoor shower, we will in fact agree that there will be no indoor shower in that small bathroom that you already have the plans of. So Brian Brady did this, and he's probably better to speak to it, but he put to scale 12-foot arborvitae on the property line. Right now there is vegetation there, but just to give you an idea of what the sightlines would be and how it relates to the house. We're as close to the house as we can get, which is 5 feet, which is the same as we showed you on the survey. This little thing will be changed slightly. This is the Bilco door that's existing. It'll have to be rebuilt to go along the side so that there's a little room to get by here.
Wait, is anybody else seeing this? Because I don't.
No. No.
Well,
No,
we're not screen sharing yet.
Oh, you're not screen sharing?
No.
No.
Oh, sorry. I'll have to see what the problem is. Share screen. I guess I have to reduce this.
it's not coming up in any way, even too big.
It's, you don't have it?
No, so when I can't see what you're doing, but are you clicking on something that we should be seeing?
Yes, it's
So
come up.
whatever that is, we're not seeing. That's all I know.
I- Um, It worked before, I'm sorry.
Can Brian do it?
You want me to try?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Brian. I worked before.
So we can see all your emails.
Yeah, I'm looking,
Okay, just so
I'm
you
out
know.
of town. I'm actually on vacation, so I am looking for the email.
Avert your
that I
eyes,
sent this to
Julia.
Linda,
I just
so
want to make sure you know.
sorry for taking so long. I'm just not finding the attachment, sorry.
Um,
Maybe we could come back to this.
I think I have it.
oh,
No, I'm sorry, it's not showing up.
ahem.
I'm able to share mine, guys. I have it on my screen. Brian, if you want to stop sharing.
Okay,
Thank you, Luke.
Yes, that's what I thought I was addressing just now. This is a picture of the existing elevation of the existing house. The proposed garage, exactly the same as the plans that you viewed before. It's moved up a little closer to the house. It's adjacent to the Bilco doors, which are going to be reconfigured, although this doesn't show that. And these are just to give you some idea of scale and size. These are 12-foot arborvitaes, which, you know, I expect that the vegetation will get higher than that. This is to give you an idea of the perspective. And then in addition to that, if this can be turned around, Luke, we submitted, again, this is done by Brian Brady, sightlines from the approximate location of the neighbor's house, same 12-foot arborvitae, and to show you what the sightlines are like. Again, we will remove the indoor shower.
One of the letters that we received today, oops, sorry, was from the neighbor to the south, his architect. And he was asking if you would be willing to consider lowering the height of the building by 2 feet.
Well, I think I'm going to let Brian, first of all, we don't require any variance relief for the height. I just want to make it clear that there's no variance requested for that. But secondly, I'd like Brian to address it because I think the reasons why he and the applicant are very reluctant to do that are best addressed by him. Brian?
yeah. So you can see with the design of the garage, I was trying to pick up on the main, you know, the main house, the Victorian house. There are basically 2 different roof slope lines. So the garage itself with the 1-car garage door picks up the main gable or the main ridge line of the roof, and then it splays out to the right. And that the purpose of that was to give the garage more storage space and that picks up some of the lines of the roof line of the porte cochere. So I was like really trying to just tie it into the house. If I reduce this by 2 feet, I would lose all of that. And I would basically have to center the garage doors to the center and just do a typical gabled roof. And all the charm of this, and my clients are really into making this little garage mimic the house and details and windows and things like that. And I would lose all of that.
Yeah, I personally agree with that. I mean, you see I don't know if you guys can see my cursor, the minor gable here, that proportion ratio is carried over really nicely over here. And I agree that you would lose that. I think, you know, the implication is maybe that if the southern neighbor felt like it wasn't going to be in their faces, they may not be opposed to this.
You know, the 16 feet, you know, is not at the 10-foot line. It's in the center of the garage. And so, you know, his letter said that it was looming over his house. And I wanted to show this, that it doesn't loom. It's, you know, you'll see the top of the cupola maybe, you know.
Yeah, and I tried to mention that at last week's meeting, in that I agree with your assessment that it really isn't right on their lot line.
No.
What may be helpful would be if the applicant would build some story poles, just with some stand up some 2x4s, and the southern neighbor could really get a sense of it.
I think that's a great idea. I would be happy to do that. I mean, the cupola is only 18 inches square.
Yeah, I don't think anybody is concerned about the cupola really, right?
No, that wasn't mentioned specifically. But okay, so we have this perspective. Linda, did you want to proceed?
Yeah, well, I don't think there's that much more that I need to add at this point in time. I mean, the clients really feel like they need a one-car garage. The storage in the cellar is not conducive for storing bikes and that sort of thing. It's a very steep stairwell. It's going to continue to be a steep stairwell, even though it's moved around to the side. It's just the minimal relief that we can possibly ask for to get a one-car garage. It's 1 5
Ms. Riley, can you clarify one thing for me? So the
Yes.
shower is removed,
The
but
shower
the
is
toilet
removed.
and the sink remain.
Correct.
Got it.
Linda, did you complete your presentation?
Yes. Do you have, well, I think my clients might be in the audience. They were going to try to chime in.
Do any, sure, whatever order you want.
Do you have any hands up?
The only hand I have up right now is Joan Morgan McGivern. She
So
would
what-
like to-
Oh,
So do any board members have any questions for Brian or Linda?
I actually have a question. The sight lines are from the ground that are being presented in that picture, correct?
No, they're from the eyesight of a 6-foot tall person.
Okay, but it doesn't actually consider where the windows are in the neighbor's house and what their perspective might be if they're in their home, correct? It's from the ground and not from the interior of their home, of course.
well, of course, but yeah, but right. Oh,
And
yes.
that's basically the driveway of the neighbor's home from
Right.
where it's taken.
And I frankly can't remember this. Is there a cupola on the main house, on the main structure
No, there's a turret.
that is being replicated by the cupola?
Not exactly. It's you know, part of a Victorian house the architecture of that. The cupola, you see a lot of garages have tiny cupolas on them in historic homes.
That answers my questions. Thank you.
Joyce or Susan, do you have any questions? Susan
No.
and Joyce, do you have any questions?
No, I don't think so.
Linda, does the homeowner wish to speak?
I thought the homeowner did wish to speak. I know that they are on vacation and they were going to have to figure out how to set it up where they were going. So if you want to take, they may.
Is Martin Siegel the owner?
That's correct.
His hand just went up. Let me go ahead and bring him in. Mr. Siegel, you're in. If you could unmute and start your camera. Thank you.
Got it. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Thank you, Chairman and the board, for looking at our application. We've through this process, we've talked to multiple homeowners and neighbors, and we've we moved the garage up in accordance with their wishes, and we appreciate your guys' consideration. So I was trying to raise my hand to get in before, just to show when everyone was having a hard time showing the drawings. But you guys can proceed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think maybe Martin, if you could address, just discuss a little bit why you feel the need to have the sink and the toilet at the rear of the garage.
Yeah, I'd be happy to speak to that. I'm Kristen Siegel. We have two little girls, and we go to the beach, we use the pool. There's a formality to the house, the Victorian home. And so it's just really a convenience as to when they, are in the pool, they're able to, or we're at the beach, you're able to go in and use the bathroom before you, go into the formal house to use the bathroom on the first floor.
I think there was concerns on our last design where it's pushing it back that it could be used as a pool house, which wasn't our intention, but by moving the garage up to the front and eliminating the shower, we eliminated those concerns as it wasn't our intention anyway.
And also, I have to point out again that a bathroom is not prohibited in a garage. There's no reason why there couldn't be a toilet. There's no variance relief sought for that, is what I'm trying to say.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Jolie,
Yes.
does
One
any
moment.
member of the public or the neighbors want to speak to this?
Yes, we have Joan Morgan Givern and Brian Rabin that we'll bring in.
Lyndon and Brian, if your presentation is complete, we can, we can have you sign off, and I think what we may end up doing is adjourning this for all purposes at any rate, if that's okay with you when we're done with tonight's meeting.
Okay, I would just like to reserve a little space if there's something that Joan says that I want to respond to. If that's
Of course, we'll invite you back in.
Okay, that's fine.
Good evening, members of the board. I would like to share my screen. I dropped these drawings off earlier today. It took a while to get them done. And hopefully, bear with me a minute. These are drawings that we tried to simulate the impact on the Rabin's house of this garage. We had the help of CU Lou Architects. Some of you know her as Lucy, and she did these drawings based on surveys of the property. The first drawing I'm showing you is an aerial view from the back, without the proposed garage, but the garage is outline. The outline of it is indicated. So this is the view if you were to insert the garage. On the impact of 49 Elm. This is what 49 Elm looks like from the stairwell window, which is a window that goes between the first and the second floor. This is what it looks like now with the tree and arborvitae that are, I believe, although Barry's on the phone, something on the order of 10 to 12 feet already. So the fact that arborvitae might get longer, taller, I should say, still, this is the impact that the proposed garage is going to have on their view from a stairwell that's not even on the second floor yet, which is one of the reasons that we believe the massing should be reduced or it should be taken down 2 feet. This is the present view from the master bedroom. Now you're on the second floor. Again, you can see the tops of the arborvitae. This is the view from the master bedroom of basically the roof and little else. This is the view from towards the back of the house and the balcony of the house that's off the master bedroom without the garage. And this will become the view with the garage. I don't know if you have any questions. I have 2 photos I was going to show you to give it more of a reality. Oops, I went in the wrong direction. The photo on the left is a photo of the stairwell window, the rectangular window, and the sort of turret shows at least one of the first floor windows, the second floor master bedroom windows. And then the photo to the left shows the balcony that comes off the master bedroom and the turrets. This is a window of the master bedroom. This is another window, and this is the balcony. It would be directly across. Probably this tree would come down, which would be unfortunate as it provides screening. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Otherwise, I'd probably just like to remind the board that of the 5-factor test, one of the factors is the detriment to nearby properties. And we submit that even though perhaps you don't need a variance for the 16-foot garage, they do need a variance of basically 33% to have it this much closer to the property line. And it really does interfere with the enjoyment of the Rabin's house in a very fundamental way.
Joan, how far is the Rabin's house from their property line?
10, I think 10 feet or less.
And could you just remind us of the history of the 2 properties? I think Mr. Rabin had mentioned that at one time the 2 properties may have been one property.
At one point they were one property, and according to Mr. Rabin, this was historically the carriage house, or a smaller version of it was the carriage house, and there was a historical relationship between the properties. I also would like to add at this point that if you drive around this particular neighborhood, which is in the historic district, the garages that are grandfathered do not have 16-foot high ceilings or roofs. They're much more modest, 10, maybe 12 feet high. and certainly not 26 feet long. I understand if you were building a new garage today, you know, brand new, but you're not building in a brand new neighborhood. You're building in an historic neighborhood where properties have relationships to each other. And it just strikes us that this is just cramming something into a space where it shouldn't be crammed into. And it does really impact the quality of their life in a fundamental way. I don't know if Barry's on or if he'd like to speak to this.
He is in as a panelist, I believe. Is that Brian Rabin or Rabin?
Rabin, right. Brian, would you like to speak?
You can turn on your camera and turn on your microphone, please.
Hi, thank you, and good evening, board members and neighbors. And I really appreciate the time you're taking to hear our concerns, and they are deep concerns, and we really appreciate your consideration. I'll try to be short. The garage with the bathroom is really a very large structure for the tight spaces between our houses. Joan is correct. We are as close to the property line due to the historical nature of the two properties as one, would want, and we're as close to their house as one could already, want to be to another house. It's historic. It's a beautiful area of the neighborhood, but you couldn't build our house so close to the property line today. It's not allowed, right? And we're less than 10 feet away. So from our perspective, squeezing in a sizable structure in this very small space, you saw the impact. We were trying to demonstrate it in the prior session with a poll that I had put up relative to my house, and I understand the concept that it's not built right on my window, but the height is extremely high. And as Joan mentioned, if you look at all the other garages nearby, they're really much more modest in size. The architect, Jim McMullen of Fleetwood McMullen, who took a look at this, basically thought, very easily, it was very possible to redo this in a much more natural, more harmonious way for the neighbor to accomplish the goal of a single car garage. And also, as Mr. Brady said, pick up different roof lines. So according to Mr. McMullen, he said that would be very easy to accomplish and ought to be, what they consider. And he also mentioned something else, that initially this same height, this garage, which, and I'm not an architect, but this is his words, was 16 feet high, and it was set in the back of the property. And the concept of perspective and massing, when you brought that forward to, closer to the street, to Elm Street, now the perspective of it grows and it gets bigger from the street's perspective. So from a natural perspective, if it looked good at 16 feet in the back of the house, it ought to be smaller in the front of the house. And then, of course, he used the term massing to basically say, and again, I don't want to get into the details of it, but the space this is occupying relative to our house and the tight nature is simply too big. And the diagrams, what Joan showed, I went at some great expense to hire a local architect who's built houses in the neighborhood, a number of them, to create and this is her words, as accurate as a simulation as possible. And that was our message to her, because we want to see the impact. We don't, if there's something to worry about, terrific. And this is what she created. And, we were left thinking that, we are going to be severely impaired. It is one of the zoning code of Southampton. One of the declared purposes says it's to prevent overcrowding of land and buildings, and we think this is exactly what's happening here. But we also think a middle ground can be struck. So we basically, in our ideal world, structure doesn't exist. Let's just put that out there, okay? But we also want to consider the neighbors' needs. We want to be good neighbors. We want to have good relationships with all our neighbors. And we would like them to enjoy the benefit of a single car garage with space for storage. So what we were thinking, and again, and I don't disagree with Luke Ferran's analysis that the average American garage is getting bigger over time. But, you know, according to Google, who knows everything, the average garage is 9 to 14 feet wide. This one is 14 feet wide. Google says that the average length is 18 to 22 feet. This is 26 feet. And we don't disagree, again, with him at all, that if you were like starting from scratch, if I were designing a house, I want a biggest garage as possible, but that's not the context of this situation. The context is, of course, how close our houses are in a historical district. And then, so what we want to do is hopefully mitigate the impact on us, and also, you know, see what's possible for the neighbors. So what we're suggesting is simply this. If you reduce the length of the garage by 6 to 8 feet, that does a number of things. What you have to understand is it currently is aligned with our deck in the back of our house. Our deck sits in front of our master bedroom by about that length. So if you reduced it by, you know, that amount, you now have actually taken the garage and indeed moved it, by truncating it, moved it out of our yard. You are preventing, we're going to see less of it from the deck at all. And it will also mitigate the impact on one of our windows in the master as we look out into the yard. And we don't think that's a big ask, going from 20, you know, to 18 to 20, 26 to 18 to 20 feet, considering, again, you know, a one-car garage. But more importantly, on the height, the height is critical to us. And I'm not going to go over the slides that Joan did, but I hope you have copies of them. And if you'd like, if you don't, we'll make sure you have. But that height, to us, is just unreasonably high, especially for a garage. Now, imagine going to a garage that's 16 feet. What room has, you know, in a house, you know, comes up to that height? We believe a 13 to 14 foot height. Mr. McMullen said it, you know, by reducing it by at least 2 feet. Okay, you want to take that to be 2 feet. We think that, you know, is more than reasonable. Just to put this in perspective, a Cadillac Escalade, like the biggest car you can possibly find, is 6'4" in height. So, you know, 14 feet, 13, 14 feet, there's going to be no usage percentage at all. And it also has nice benefit, by the way, and we're not you know, basically, we want to reduce the impact on our privacy. When you build something that high and have, you know, a window off the back that can peer into our yard with our pool, we have a 2-year-old, we have a 10-year-old, we'd like to preserve our privacy as well in this whole process. And we think that reducing it by 2 feet really is a nice step towards doing that. 3 feet preferable, we'd accept, you know, 2 feet seems more, you know, doable. So, you know, the other thing that has a nice, but there's a bathroom put in the garage. It seems like an odd thing. There's no, you know, it's fine. But this also prevents this garage structure from becoming an apartment. And because then it reduces the potential of having a second floor put in this, or a loft, or whatever you want to call it. So look, in short, we think the damages to us at 49 Elm far outweigh the benefit to the applicant. And a simple reduction is what we're asking for. A middle ground here, we think, is not going to prevent them from enjoying a new garage. We want to be good neighbors. We want them to have a good garage. But you also don't, you know, we believe this is going to really negatively impact us. So, you know, that's where we are. And, you know, I hope that wasn't too long. If anybody has any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer. But, you know, we greatly appreciate your consideration in this, and thank you.
No, thank you, Mr. Raven.
There's a hand up in the attendee pool. Mr. Max Holmes would like to be heard as well.
Yes.
Mr. Holmes, you're in. If you'd like to start your camera and your microphone.
Great, thank you very much, everyone. It's Max Holmes. I'm the other neighbor on the other side. I'll be much briefer. I've made 2 presentations previously. I'll be much briefer today. Mr. Wallach, welcome aboard. This is the third contested hearing on this matter. There have been 4 issues. The first issue is whether this structure is or could be a pool house. I think that issue has now been resolved by the movement of the structure away from the pool. And so I do want to compliment Mr. and Mrs. Martin for having been thoughtful and sensitive in fixing that issue. The second issue is whether this is a garage or potentially in the future some other type of structure like an apartment. I'm still concerned about that. For the record, we're still opposed to a bathroom. It was mentioned there's a bathroom on the first floor of the house. We don't even have a bathroom on the first floor of our house. So I've never heard of a bathroom in a garage. Apparently, Southampton is littered with that, but I have never heard of one. So for the record, we're still opposed to a bathroom. The third issue and the biggest issue at the moment is the mass of the structure. And if I could share my screen, I have just 3 photos that I want to show, if that's possible. I think that Attorney Riley is just fundamentally wrong. She keeps saying, we don't need a variance for a bathroom. We don't need a variance for 14 feet or 16 feet. We don't need a variance for the length. We don't need a variance for the width. But they still need a variance. They still need a variance to have any garage at all at this location. So it is within the board's power to completely deny a garage or to condition it on reasonable items, right? So let me just show you my screen if I could. This will be quick. I've got 3 photos I want to show you. Everybody can see this? So
We
this
we can see your email, but not the photos.
the photo. Okay, let me try and fix that. Is this better?
We don't have it yet, sir.
Still not. Screen sharing is paused.
Mr. Holmes, I think you want to stop screen sharing and then restart again.
There you
Okay.
go.
There.
You got it now?
It's up now, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So these are photos taken a couple of weeks ago from our master bedroom suite, which is towards the back of our house. And so it's just 3 simple photos. The first one, you can see we already have a straight shot at the pool area, right? So that is what it is. It's that was conforming. I got to find the next one. Can you see this one?
No,
No.
not yet.
I did it once, so I can do it again. Can you see it now?
Not yet. Now we do.
There you go. Okay. So we would be wherever this is, this is again from our master bedroom, right? We would be looking straight at it, right? So the mass and structure and height and so forth are important to us, right? And here's Mr. Rabin's house over here, sort of in a little bit in the distance. And then I'll show you one more and then I'm done. Yes.
Yep.
And so this is from a different window, right? So in looking from a different window, we no longer see their house, but you can see to the left there, that green space, we would see this. We would see this additional structure, right? So if there's going to be a garage, we would certainly urge, and obviously Mr. Raven is more affected than we are, but 12 feet and smaller and no bathroom sounds like a decent answer. Mr. Wallach, since you're here, the fourth issue here, which is really above my pay grade. We've been in the village for about 20 years at 2 different locations, but Mr. Wallach, the fourth issue is the issue Ms. Stevenson brought up, right? Which is encroachment and jamming buildings into historic areas, right? I can't really answer that question. That's a broader, wider urban planning, town planning, village planning issue that maybe you'll have an opinion on. But those are the 4 issues. Again, the first one's been resolved. The second one, I think, can be easily resolved by getting rid of the bathroom. And then I do think that you all have the power to reduce the mass of this to a more traditional size for the village and certainly this neighborhood, and less intrusive on myself and Mr. Ray and his family. That's it for me.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, you're muted.
Jolie, does anybody else from the public wish to be heard?
Linda Riley would like to come back in. Would you like me to take out anyone that's currently in to bring her in?
Yes, if we could just have Linda step forward, and if anybody else wants to reappear or reattend, that would be fine.
Okay.
But for now, let's just have Linda step forward.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Linda, you're in, Linda. Linda, you're in, you can start your camera.
Yeah, I was, yeah. Well, the chair has already said that this is going to be adjourned, and certainly my clients and I and Brian Brady will continue to discuss these points as we have. We have been considering what the neighbors have been saying, and we'll continue to do that. And we'll come back next time. But I just want to point out too that some of the concerns that the neighbors are raising, having to do with massing and height and those things, are also really primarily in the purview of the Architectural Review Board. We have to. That kind of design element is something that is more of their concern. But I welcome the chance to discuss with them again and see if there's something else we can
Just
do.
Linda, just a couple of quick questions. Just for the record, what's the height of the garage?
16 feet at the ridge, the top. Not at the sidewalls.
And then
On top of that,
what about the
The
cupola?
cupola is 18 inches on top of the 16, but under the code, cupolas are not included in height.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
So Ms. Riley, and I just have a question. So if the matter's going over, perhaps we can talk in between. I was looking at 116-12 of the code, and That talks about cupolas not being included on any public or semi-public building. So I'm just, perhaps we can talk tomorrow or so, because it doesn't reference private buildings. For beyond that, it talks about flagpoles, chimneys, flues, 116 sorry, I just scrolled past it, -12A2 would apply in other areas, but it doesn't mention cupolas. So perhaps if we could discuss that a bit further.
Well, I'll take a look at that also.
Thank you. I'd appreciate it.
Okay,
Mr.
so can I have
Bradley,
a-
do you, go ahead.
No,
Go ahead,
go,
Mark.
Luke, go ahead.
I was just gonna ask, do you know if Mr. Siegel has spoken personally to Mr. Holmes or Mr. Rabin?
He has
It-
spoken, yeah, he has
Yeah.
spoken to both of them.
Well, I
It
did,
seems
I
like-
did want to say this to everybody. I mean, I understand that the neighbors are weighing in, and we appreciate that, and it's enlightening for us, and it's educational, and the amount of time and effort that they're devoting themselves to perspectives and drawings is helpful to the board, but the board has other concerns as well. I don't want this to appear as if it's a negotiation and accommodation among neighbors. You know, we as board members are looking at, of course, the impact on neighbors, but also the other standards that we're mandated to consider with respect to the neighborhood, with respect to other properties throughout the village, et cetera. So I know we've spent a great deal of time, interacting among neighbors, but I don't think that the neighbors agreeing to what should be allowed here is the beginning and end of this by any long shot, if that's clear.
And in fact, the primary thing that the board has to do, as you already know, because you're familiar with the state law, is weigh the benefit to the applicant against any detriment to the health, safety, or welfare of the neighborhood. Probably a needless reminder, but I'm agreeing.
So I didn't mean to interrupt you, Luke. Go ahead. But so they have spoken to each other?
Right, and I think, the application evolves each time, and it may be helpful to get to your final application, and it would be great if that application was maybe took into consideration or was done in conjunction with the two neighbors. So it got to a point where maybe if they weren't exactly speaking in favor of it, they would at least withdraw their objection to it. And then we could do as Mark says, which is judge it by the guidelines that we have.
Well, all right.
I think that's unreasonable.
Respectfully, I think it's unreasonable too, just as a general principle, to require accord between the neighbors. And there's a lot of case law that says that just because a neighbor objects is not grounds for denying a variance. Obviously, we have to consider the impacts on the neighborhood. I don't disagree with that, but whether or not there's opposition from a particular neighbor shouldn't unduly sway the board from the
And
balancing.
I agree with you, because that's like asking people if they approve. What are you going to say to your neighbor? It's been when I was on another board, it was pointed out to us that yes, the public should weigh in. There were people who had online petitions, and that basically the court said none of that matters, basically. So I don't want to spend my time on that. I do think the privacy issues are our purview.
Well, if anything, the garage increases the privacy.
There are no windows on that side of the garage.
I don't agree with you. I do think that I give up.
Well, right now the Ravens can see right through 104 Post's windows, and the garage does stop that. I'm not advocating for the garage by any
Maybe
means.
they should build a wall. I mean, that's really, I'm not going down that path.
And I'm not requiring that they reach a consensus either. Just saying, I've sat in Southampton Town ZBA hearings where the board members say, all right, applicant, neighbor, go out in the hallway and work out a compromise, and then we'll hear you.
Well,
I don't think it's ridiculous to ask three neighbors who talk about being neighborly to speak to each other.
Well, they have been speaking to each other. I just want to tell you that.
Linda, for the time being, can we motion to adjourn this for all purposes?
Actually,
And
Mark, can I ask, it's Julia. I have one additional question that I've been trying to ask, which is if we're adjourning this evening and we're going to come back, it would be helpful to my own consideration of this application if I had an understanding of how many detached one-story, one-car garages with cupola are in this neighborhood, for my ability to put some context to this.
Well, can I include 2-car garages? I mean, Mr. Holmes has a 2-car garage at a non-conforming setback.
Yes.
I mean.
But I agree, Julia, it would be helpful if you had data on, the heights and sizes of garages in the neighborhood.
Well, a neighbor pointed out on Post Crossing that there are hardly any garages, that was not the way that things were done when those historic houses were built.
I respectfully disagree with that. Again, Mr. Holmes himself has a 2-car garage that's.
He's on Elm Street.
No, he's on Post Crossing around.
He's on Post Crossing.
Oh.
He's right next door.
Right. But I'm not interested. Elm Street is not, this particular street is unusual, but actually it's been voted as the most beloved street in the village, Post Crossing.
Well,
I was on the ARB. People really liked it.
I might have voted in favor of it being most beloved.
I couldn't imagine asking, but I could see why.
It's beautiful. No, yeah, so that data would be helpful to know what garages are in the neighborhood. It would be helpful to our balancing.
As well with cupolas. If that data was available, it would be very helpful to my deliberation.
Can I ask like 2 quick questions, just clarifying, because there's so much dialogue about the neighbors and the accord between the neighbors. I want to get back to the facts about what code we're supposed to, what our 5 guidelines are. We're supposed to look at, and Attorney Blinkoff, you're going to come back to us with the decision about whether the cupola is going to be calculated in this sense to the overall height of the structure. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And then, because I have an issue with that. And then the second thing is, just to clarify, Attorney Riley, is this, you're asking for a 10-foot setback?
No, I'm asking for a 10-foot setback.
Where 15
Where
is
15
required.
is required.
Where 15 is
because-
required. That's correct.
Okay, I just want to clarify that because I think that's very vital given the proximity to the property line and the scale of the structure and the location.
So we're asking for the same setback that the neighbor's house has. The house is at a 10-foot setback from the property line.
Okay.
But the house was put there a long time ago. I don't think
Exactly.
that makes any sense.
Also,
I don't think that's relevant to this situation, but thank you.
Okay, are there any more questions or comments or concerns? And otherwise, I'd like to adjourn this for all purposes.
So moved.
And a second? And
Second.
then all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you, Linda. Okay, so we're moving on to case number 3123, which is 17 Toilsome Place.
am I still in? I hope I'm still in.
Oh,
Yes, you are. Is there anyone else that needs to be brought in for this application?
Not to my knowledge. Not to my knowledge.
Okay.
So I don't have too much to add. I submitted earlier the one survey clarification that you asked for, and also put in the clarification about the sanitary lines. And I guess I just want to know if there's anything else I can provide you with.
Do any board members have any questions or concerns or?
Not at this time.
I don't.
Julie, I was going to motion to close the application for decision. Okay, so I'll make a motion to close case number 3123 for decision.
So moved.
And all in favor?
Need a second.
A second.
And Joyce?
Aye.
Okay, and I, so, okay, so we're gonna, motion carries to close case number 3123, 17 Toilsome Place for all purposes for decision.
Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. We have case number 3104. And for discussion, I would like to motion that we refer this case to the Architectural Review Board for their consideration prior to our continuing to hear case number 3104, 51 Pond Lane. I open it for discussion. One of the considerations I have been thinking about is that 51 Pond Lane was the subject of a hearing before the Architectural Review Board at the beginning of 2021, where the applicant requested and the ARB approved landmark designation of this property. And considering that among numerous other factors, I think we need to consider adjourning this pending the review by the Architectural Review Board.
I'll make the
I
motion.
agree.
So moved.
Okay, so that's the motion to adjourn 51 Pond Lane, Town of Southampton, for all purposes pending review by the Southampton Village Board of Architecture Review and Historic Preservation. All in favor, or a second, please?
Second.
And then all in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Okay, so that's unanimous. That's what our motion is carried, and we can move on to case number 3121, 199 Cooper's Neck Lane.
It's Robert Fischetti. He's coming in.
Hello again. Peter DePasqualone should be joining as well. He's the architect on the project.
He's coming in as well.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen if that's okay. So I can see everybody. Okay, so Robert Fischetti for the applicant, 199 Cooper's Neck Lane LLC. Peter Dick Pasqualone here with me. We do appreciate the opportunity to make our final points on this matter. Appreciate the board opening it back up. I know it's been a long ride. I know I'm sort of jumping on at the end. Just ask that you bear with me while I just make some points and then we can discuss. On December 8th, Peter DePasqualone submitted a site plan which was revised from the original plan. It was revised. The original plan had a 60 by 120 tennis court. The revised tennis court is 56 by 112. The court was also shifted to the west, leaving a 45-foot setback from Cooper's Neck Lane, still being sunken 3 feet below grade. On January 25th, I submitted the slightly updated version of that same plan, no change to the tennis court location, with just some more detail to help the board to get the sense of things. When you pull up an aerial of the neighborhood, you guys all know this neighborhood well. Tennis courts are part of the character of the neighborhood. There's roughly 14 houses on Cooper's Neck Lane. At least half of them have tennis courts. The trend continues on Great Plains, Ox Pasture, Halsey Neck, Captain's Neck, and throughout the R120 zone between Hetty Creek and Lake Agawam. 199 Cooper's Neck is 131,227 square feet in the R120. So there's a lot of room. We're not asking for any lot coverage variance. Aside from the double front yard, the tennis court unquestionably fits on this property. It's just a matter of the extra front yard setback. If you look closer at the neighborhood, it's also not hard to find some tennis courts in front yards. 295 Ox Pasture, 30 feet it's on the corner of Halsey Neck. It's 30 feet off there. 100 Great Plains, there's a tennis court at 10 feet off the property line. 301 Captain's Neck, there's one at 20 feet. 22 Great Plains, reduced setback 79. Some of these have variances, some of them are pre-existing. I know you're not looking to compare each variance. They do contribute to the character of the neighborhood. The character of the neighborhood is a lot of tennis courts, and when there's a corner lot, it quite often has a tennis court in the front yard. These make up the character of the neighborhood. I submitted copies of the variances for those properties back on Tuesday. I also noticed that the next application on this agenda is for a tennis court at 40 feet on 375 Ox Pasture. So that would be consistent with our request here, a little closer to the street than we're asking. Tennis court would, of course, be concealed with hedges, would be sunken. Because of the way this lot was developed, as you know, the driving force was to preserve the historic home. So by doing, in having that be the primary objective, it's sort of the development of the rest of the lot sort of, falls from there. I always understood the village to have a policy of giving some deference to historic structures. I know there's some leeway in the zoning code for the zoning board to do that in certain situations, and generally a policy to try to preserve those structures, which the applicant has done here. And in this case, the home is situated, the historic home is situated with the front door to the north. The south yard leaves the same problem as the east yard, in that there's the 90-foot setback. The south yard also would not allow for a north-south oriented tennis court. The west yard has no room whatsoever. The north yard has the entrance, the garden, the greenhouse, and 2 new septic systems. The December 8th submission included a letter from the project's engineer, Ed Armas, explaining why the septic systems needed to be installed in the north yard. The north yard also would not allow for a customary north-south oriented tennis court. Really, the east yard is the only option for a tennis court on this property. The proposed setback of 45 feet, I think in relation and in the context of the properties I mentioned with 10-foot, 20-foot, 30-foot setbacks, I don't think the 45 is substantial. The 45 is also 10 feet more than the side yard setback would be. The closest house, a non-conforming home sitting almost on Cooper's Neck Lane, is still 140 feet away, which is about 4 times the distance of what the accessory side yard setback would be. So if that same house was in, adjacent to the property instead of across the street, the court would be much closer, or potentially much closer. It's a type 2 action under secret, so no environmental impact. Here, the hardship, as with any corner lot, is from the double front yards. There's also the contributing hardship, but of preserving the historic house. That limited the way that the rest of the lot could be developed. I think it's important to note we don't have any objection from the neighbor to the north and the neighbor to the west. Bob and Karen Keeley of 45 Meadowmere did put in a letter of support for this application. I know you've been looking at this a lot. The site plan did put the accessories setback so you can see, the limited space. Really, that's what I have. I mean, we've shrunk it down. We slid it closer to the house. Peter, unless you have anything to add, I think that, that's sort of where we are with this. It's definitely scaled back from the first version that you saw. I think it is consistent with corner lots in the neighborhood. I'm not saying every corner lot has a tennis court, but there's a good amount, not that many corners in this neighborhood, just not that many streets in this neighborhood, but we do think that it's consistent with that and would be consistent with, however things fall on the next application would be consistent with that as well.
Did I just correct the record? Mr. Fischetti, I was the chair of the ARB where many accommodations were made in the renovation and of the house, additions, pool houses, all kinds of things. So I believe that the village, not in our case, since we haven't made a judgment, but in terms of the renovation of the house and the development of the property, in which I believe no tennis court was ever mentioned, a lot of accommodations were made, and it was recognized that preserving the house was to the advantage of the village and for which the village was grateful.
Robert, did Mr. DePasquale want to speak to the application?
No, I think Rob did a great job, and I've probably heard enough from me at this point.
Rob, did you have anything more to add?
I mean, that's it. I think, I think that it's, I know that, you've heard a lot about this application, but I do think it deserves a fair shake. I do think that, I would hope that it gets the same consideration that, the next application that, that hasn't been, in front of you several times would get. It's really the same type of ask. Something, a tennis court in the front yard. It's a small, it's a reduced size. It's across the street on Cooper's Neck. As I said, the other house is 140 plus feet away. And then it's basically a yard. There's no direct impact other than a house that's further away than, twice as far as away as two side yard accessory setbacks. So
the one thing I will add is that the court design and presentation and landscaping is such that the court does not want to be visible. It's not intended to be visible even from the yard, let alone from the street.
Yeah, Rob, if you've completed your presentation and if Mr. DePasquale, and I hope I pronounced that correctly, doesn't have anything more to add. Jolie, do any neighbors wish to be heard?
Yes, there's a hand up. Maureen, she's going to come in. And Peter Campbell would like to be heard as well. Maureen?
Yeah, hi, can you see me?
Yeah, could you give me your last name, please?
I'm sorry, Maureen Sherry, Sherry. I also live on Cooper's Neck Lane. I'm someone who had spoken against this application in its previous form in the summer, and I thought it was sort of a dead issue. I did notice that the investor and slash owner of the property has had this outline of a tennis court, the entire time. So clearly the assumption, it feels like, has been that this would pass irregardless of, any of us being heard. But what I wanted to speak to was more the fact that, the cornfield is likely at some point to be sold and many new houses will be on Cooper's Neck Lane. And so it concerns me that if this becomes a past or allowable thing, why wouldn't all these other houses then too want their tennis courts to be in the front yard so that they can enjoy the peace and quiet of a pool or something in their backyard? And so I feel it's setting a dangerous precedent. I also feel that the owner of the home is an investor and clearly has stated that he has no intention of ever living in our neighborhood where myself and most of the other homeowners have lived for over 20 years. And I just think, there are rules and the village has made these rules for excellent reasons, and going back and looking for, other homes that had it on Ox Pasture years ago, it just doesn't really seem to make sense to me as a reason to approve this application. We love our neighborhood and our block, and it feels very unique to us and their fellow neighbors who live there, and we just want to keep it that way. So thank you for hearing me.
Thank you.
Mr. Campbell, would you like to speak?
Good evening, everyone. Once again, I've spoken about this many times. I'm sure you're getting tired of hearing from me, and I'm sure you're probably getting tired of hearing about this case in general. In the 14 months since we've been looking at this, I don't believe that the applicant has really changed anything significant. Yes, a few feet here, a few feet there, but their argument certainly has not changed. What they attempted to do in this last iteration was to say that the sanitary systems could not be placed anywhere else. But in fact, the engineer who wrote the letter, Edward Armis, said that other locations for sanitary were problematic due to required health separations, proposed structures, driveways, and distances from the house. So it seems like the applicant has created this problem himself. And in fact, there was certainly a place to put this tennis court in the north yard, which is what we have said all along. And as board member Stevenson had mentioned, that at the ARB, there was no mention of a tennis court. This could have all been figured out way back then. It wasn't. This has tried to be shoehorned in after the fact, and I just don't believe that it's right. Thank you.
Thank you.
There is, yeah,
Jody,
there's
by the
one.
way, let Rob and Mr. Di Pasquale exit while we hear from the neighbors, and we can always have them return.
Yeah, I'd like to respond at the end, please.
Would you like to have the two neighbors that have already spoken pull out as well?
Yes.
Okay, Miss Avril Mortimer is coming in, and I'll pull out the others.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes.
This has been a really tortured process. We appreciate the trustees for their consideration, but it has galvanized the entire neighborhood over the year-long plus that this application has been before us. Cooper's Neck is one of the most serene, private, peaceful streets in the estate section. There is no precedent to have a tennis court right along the street as is proposed. As my neighbor Peter Campbell just commented, this seems like a complete afterthought to the whole design of the tennis court and putting it to be included in the property just solely for the purpose of maximizing the value for the developer who has never nor has any intention to ever live in the neighborhood. So I think the references to prior tennis courts on other streets that might have an entirely different fact pattern is really, inappropriate for consideration here. My biggest objection is the it relates exactly to that last point, is having this as this variance as a reference point for other future development that inevitably is going to occur on the north end of Cooper's Neck. With the which are currently having the cornfields, and that eventually will be developed. It will be so convenient for those applicants to be citing this variance request, if it's accepted, which obviously I hope is not, as applicable reasons for why their application should be accepted. So you get on a very slippery slope. Additionally, in the prior hearing, there was a suggestion that there would be no noise or disturbance caused from any use of the players using the tennis court. In all deference, that is really an absurd assertion that people play tennis quietly, almost in silence, as if they're in a library, without contesting points or the game. It is a raucous, athletic, outdoor sport that inevitably creates noise and disturbance that will, violate the integrity and privacy as exists now. Also, a lot of tennis courts are used as basketball courts. So here you have a situation where it is very visible, very much on the street. To say that it is not intended to be visible, well, it is visible. It would be visible, but also it would be very visible as a neighborhood rec center to be used as a basketball court, which, since the developer has no interest in living on the property, has no idea, who the ultimate purchase would be. So as I stated in my last comments back in December, since the applicant, the developer has no interest to live there, let whomever ultimately purchase the property decide if they indeed want to install a tennis court, and let them pick this up at that time, should they so choose to do so. So again, I gratefully respect the consideration of the committee. Clearly, Cooper's Neck is a very special street that's enjoyed by the broad community, not just the members of the residents who live on the block. And it is deemed an ideal place to walk because of the solitude, the serenity, the tranquility, all of which would be materially harmed and disturbed by this variance. So I thank you very much for your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Jolie, does anybody else wish to be heard?
There are no hands up in the attendee pool. I wasn't, I'm sorry, yes. Okay. Robert Fischetti would like to come back in.
Sure.
And Peter De Pasquale is coming back in as well.
Thanks. I just wanted to respond to a couple of specific points. So one, I'm not aware of any provision in the code that gives investors any different rights than homeowners, but that's one thing. As far as any development across the street on Cooper's Neck, I mean, one of those homes would have to be a corner lot with a historic home to try to match this fact pattern and take advantage of it. Also, the board said that, it's in the practice of looking at each thing case by case. So, this shouldn't be something that's going to look at as an automatic free for all of tennis courts in front yards. Again, this is a somewhat unique situation, or at least limited, in that it's a historic home on a corner lot. I don't believe the ARB would have had the authority to grant a tennis court in the front yard, had it been brought up then. So I don't know that, I wasn't involved then, so I don't know all the reasoning behind not including it then. And then as far as the noise, I mean, it's the same noise that a neighbor to the side would would have, and the side yard setback is 35 feet. So, you know, 2 side yard setbacks, you're talking 70 feet. It's, you know, 60 feet to the road. You know, I just don't picture for the couple of 100 feet that someone's walking by this road, if someone's playing tennis, that they're going to be, you know, there's talk like a tennis game is like, you know, some thunderous activity that's going to knock someone out of their shoes as they're walking by. I just don't think that's, you know, necessarily the case. I understand that everybody, you know, wants to have peace and quiet, but, you know, this is no closer than it would be to a side yard neighbor. So I just wanted to point that out.
Rob, question for you. I'm happy to be fact checked on this. My understanding is that the current homeowner was not the owner at the time when the project was, you know, first put underway. Am I right on that? There was an owner in between when it was somewhat of a derelict house, and then someone else bought it.
Pete might be able to answer that better than me. My history with this application doesn't go very far back, so I don't know that off the top of my head.
What does that have to do with what we're doing here?
Well, if there were an intermediate owner who had brought the application to the ARB and had done all of the engineering work and all the planning for the, you know, the greenhouse, then a lot of that really wasn't up to the current owner.
I'm with you. Peter, I think it was the current applicant who.
That's right.
proposed.
The current owner, yeah, there was a previous attempt to renovate the house that was abandoned for a number of years. This owner bought it.
I understand.
Owner went through the whole project. We did go before the ARB. There was no tennis court and no intention to have a tennis court at that time. As the project has developed over time, there was the desire to add a tennis court. That desire did exist initially, and it changed. That's the reasoning why it looks different between now and then.
Peter, can I ask you these questions? Did the current applicant add the greenhouse, or was
Yes.
that?
Yep.
And did the current applicant add the garage?
Yes.
And then did the current applicant add the pool?
Yes.
Okay, so, okay.
The limitations on the north side of the property have to do with the location of the sanitary system. And that
No,
being the
I'm with you.
impact-
I was just responding to Luke's inquiries as to
Sure.
what this current applicant inherited that you know, and
Yeah, I mean, there were 2 accessory structures in the location where we're proposing the court. There was a pool and there was a pool house in the same location. We inherited those.
Was there ever a tennis court on the property?
No, just the pool and pool house.
Got it. Thank you.
Wasn't the house along, there was an addition also, the glass.
Oh, there was.
I don't know what, I don't, the ARB doesn't do what's inside, so I don't know what was in it, but.
Yeah, that's true. There was another addition on the south side of the building that was removed for historic reasons as well. It was covering up the existing building.
Oh, okay.
okay, Rob, I think, are we ready to close this for decision?
Yes, no, I mean, we entered this sort of additional hearing with that understanding that, you know, we would, you know, have this final opportunity to present our points, and then, you know, that you would vote from there.
Okay, thank you. So I'll motion to close case number 3121 199 Cooper's Neck Lane for decision.
Second. Oh, so moved.
And all in favor?
I
Aye.
seconded my own motion. Someone has to
Aye.
second. Aye.
So it's unanimous that we're closing this for decision. So thank you, Peter, and thank you, Rob.
Thank you very much.
I'd like to ask the board if they would like to move 3121 to a vote, a discussion and a vote.
I'm prepared to do that. I'm prepared to vote on it this evening.
And
I
Luke
am
and-
too. We've done.
I'll
it
vote
for-
on it tonight.
And Joyce, you're okay with that? So, I mean, we've heard this case for a very long time. In fact, I think this is the longest case I've ever had with the ZBA. So to put it into our mandated context, one of the considerations is whether this variance request is substantial. And it's 45 feet where 90 feet is required. So I'm of the mind that yes, that's a substantial variance request. I don't know how to see it any other way or any other mathematical way. It's half of what the code requires. You know, with respect to this being a structure that has a detriment to nearby properties, yes, I think tennis courts are a source of a tremendous amount of noise, commotion, and may be one of the reasons why we have the code provision in the first place. Let's not have accessory structures such as these in our front yard. The code, to my mind, wants these structures in the backyard so as to prevent noise from being generated into the front yard, people passing by, neighbors, you know, et cetera. I know Southampton Village very well. I also know the Hamptons in general very well. If I drive around Watermill, Bridgehampton, et cetera, the idea of a front yard tennis court is very unusual. So for numerous reasons, and I'll open it, you know, up for you know, discussion. I do not see how, on balance, you know, the benefit to this applicant, you know, outweighs the detriment to the neighborhood. I also think, as we've discussed in prior meetings, there may have been a way for this applicant to plan better if they had thought they needed a tennis court on this property, but they precluded some of their other options that would have had less of an impact on the neighborhood. It could have been a tennis court located further from the front yard. But I don't think that this applicant took into consideration the benefit of a tennis court to this applicant early enough. And that's part of the problem that they've run into here. It's a bit of an afterthought. But that's all I have to say about this. I would vote to deny the variance request tonight.
I would too. I also think, you know, it's a substantial variance. It is in a prominent part of this neighborhood. I don't think that front yard tennis courts are really the want of the community. And although there may be some, I don't know, Mr. Fischetti didn't really enumerate where they were. And I know that there are some really old ones, but we really haven't been giving a lot of front yard tennis courts in the past few years. And there's a reason for it, that it starts to change how the neighborhood looks, how it sounds. And in this is a particularly, to me, historic and quite fancy neighborhood, which I like to drive around in and walk around in. So I do think it would be detrimental to the character of the neighborhood. And I don't see the need, really. Not everyone can have everything. And obviously in the initial planning stages, that wasn't even a consideration. But I do believe people are allowed to change their minds, but I think it would adversely affect the physical conditions of the neighborhood. And I also think it's in a sense self-created because all those other buildings were put on the property. So I'd be a no.
Julia, did you express where you would vote, or did you want to?
I would not be able to approve this variance request, and I would not for two distinct reasons. The first being that from its initial presentation through the many, many months, it has remained as too substantial a request from the code. And secondly, I do believe that this particular request is also a self-created hardship by the homeowner. If at some future time they were to, relocate some of these accessory structures, perhaps there might be a more suitable place, but there hasn't been a substantial enough of a change for me to have a different opinion.
And Joyce or Luke, do you want to weigh in?
Go ahead, Joyce.
In concept, I think, it's a reasonable request to have a tennis court on your property. I think given this particular situation, that the setback, the variance for the setback that he's asking is quite tremendous. And I also worry about setting an unfortunate precedent for the neighborhood, the historic nature of Cooper's Neck. So I would have to vote no.
So I guess I'm the dissenting opinion here. I would vote in support of this application. In so much as future applications on the street are concerned, if the cornfield ever gets developed, those are going to be new homes. And I would never vote to allow a tennis court in the front yard on a new property. But I do believe that this applicant and all applicants with historic homes deserve special consideration from us. I'm familiar with these types of projects. The engineer's letter is very compelling to me. There are so many restrictions in terms of where these sanitary systems can be placed, distances from homes, distances from accessory buildings, distances from neighboring sanitary systems, distances from lot lines, streets, everything. The sanitary systems determine so much more of the design of a site than I think most people realize. I think preserving the north side of the property as the historic entry to the home is important. I think that is determining a lot of the site layout, and I don't think that's a self-created hardship. We can't only consider the historic exterior of the house, but we have to think about the interior of the house as well. Some of these accessory uses wouldn't make sense up in the northwest corner of the property, even if the sanitary system allowed them. That's the back of the house there. It's the kitchen, it's the service quarters, it's the garage. The logical place for these accessory uses are where the applicant has them. Also think about like the alternatives. The application never went to the ARB to get a certificate of appropriateness for demo, but let's just say the ARB granted that. The house would be pushed right up on the southeast corner. Nobody would be happy then. And that would be, to me, the most detrimental to the neighborhood. It's a brand new house right up on the corner. In terms of noise on the street, it's kids selling lemonade across the street. It's cars zooming down to Cooper's. It's me and tons of other people running down the street. I'm just not convinced by the neighbors complaints, especially in light of how we were just instructed to not take neighbors' complaints into consideration at 104 post. But really, to me, this comes down to recognition rather, that someone put in considerable time and expense to save what is, in my opinion, an important piece of architecture in Southampton Village. And really part of what makes the village. To lose that house is way worse than the new construction that I guarantee you every neighbor would hate.
No, I mean, I'm listening to everything you said, and I think that you, if you had sat down with this applicant before they did anything, and they had said to you, I think a tennis court is very, very important. Let's discuss where I might want to site a tennis court. I think your site plan would have been, better and less imposing on the neighborhood. Instead, they were left with one option when they had prior feasible options. And they came to us and said, we need a tennis court 45 feet from the property line where 90 feet is required. We understand that may cause more noise and commotion to the neighborhood, but I think they had better options. And I'm not saying that every property in the village has room for a tennis court. And a lot of corner lots will not have room for tennis courts. And I'm not saying that the village wouldn't be worse off in general if everybody had tennis courts in their front yard. I don't think it's something that in general in the Hamptons is condoned. I think it's very unusual.
Sure, I agree. I mean, it is unusual, right? But how many tennis court owners have these 100-year-old homes, beautiful brick homes? No one is who's building a brick house now? It's beautiful, it's special. Again, in terms of setting a precedent, unless you're going to come to this board and me with a historic restoration, then that's 100% no for me for a tennis court in the front yard. I don't see how the property gets away from some level of variance, Mark, be it a tennis court or a greenhouse or a swimming pool. And maybe some of those would be easier to swallow. I take your point.
But they did. Up until this point, they didn't require any variances. They did something somewhat clever. They didn't need a variance for the front yard pool, the quote unquote front yard pool, because they extended the garage and then put the pool in what would have been the front yard.
Right.
It was smart, but otherwise they would have required a variance. At any rate, I mean, it's a balancing test. That's what we do. We deliberate, the 5 factors. We listen to the applicant's arguments. It's a board that may have a difference of opinion, but I think we're ready to vote. I think I see where the vote is going, but
Mr. Chairman, what I'd like to do, if I may, is just for the record, let me just state what the 5 factors are that I believe the board is assessing, just so that it's a matter of the record. So in looking at area variances, the board, as you mentioned, takes into consideration the benefit to the applicant if the variance is granted is weighed against the detriment to the health, safety, and welfare of the neighborhood or community by such a grant. And then you had mentioned the 5 factors that the board was considering. So for the record, I'll just go through those. 1, whether an undesirable change will be produced in the character of the neighborhood or a detriment to nearby properties will be created by the granting of the area variance. 2, whether the benefit sought by the applicant can be achieved by some method feasible for the applicant to pursue other than an area variance. 3, whether the requested area variance is substantial. 4, whether the proposed variance will have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood or district. And 5, whether the alleged difficulty was self-created, which consideration, the last one, is relevant to the decision of the board, but does not necessarily preclude the granting of the area variance. So I'm sorry to interrupt with that.
No, we welcome the interruption. Okay, in considering those 5 factors, I move that we vote to deny the variance request in case number 3124, requesting a front yard tennis court 45 feet from the front yard where 90 feet is required. Can I have a second to that?
Mr. Chairman, may I just ask, would
course.
that be subject to a written decision that I'd prepare for the board?
Yes.
Consistent? Okay.
Thank you. Subject to a detailed written decision.
Second. Or
All in
so
favor?
moved.
Aye.
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 Aye. Okay, so did we do this correctly, Jeff, or do we need to vote clearly that we are voting to deny the variance request?
No, I understood the vote on the motion. I just didn't hear, I assume Mr. Farren was voting nay. I just didn't hear it.
Luke, were you nay?
I'm voting nay. I think it sends a bad precedent to owners of historic homes. Nay.
And Julia, you're a yes, and
I am a yes.
Susan, you're a yes?
Yes to deny. Yeah.
Yes to deny the variance request. And Joyce?
Yes to deny.
And I am a yes to deny. So we're denying the variance request in this case in a vote 4-1. Okay, let's move on to case number 3116, which is 375 Ox Pasture Road. Jolie, is the applicant here?
Yes. Mr. Benincasa is coming in. You're in, Mr. Benincasa.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Good to see you all. So first, let me just start with sharing my screen. Can you see this screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. So first, since I was last here, the proposal has changed a bit. One, pursuant to the board's request, we added the setbacks. Let me get the revised survey. We added the accessory and principal setbacks. As you requested, copies of that survey were filed. I don't know if the board has them in front of them just yet. They were filed this week. In addition, okay, we'll make sure that they get to you. They were filed with the town, so it took a while to actually get these, partially because the relief requested has changed to some degree. If you'll note, in the original survey, here we were requesting 40 feet, 40-foot setback from Mary Lee Drive, and the tennis court was approximately 2,550 square feet as far as the area within the setback. We've revised that, and now we're requesting a 44-foot setback, so we've reduced the amount of relief we're requesting, and the area has been reduced as the size of the tennis court has shrunken by 10% to 2275. I'm sorry, it's hard to see on the screen. Yeah, 2275 square feet within the setback. We've also learned some new information. At the time of our last hearing, my FOIL request had not been responded to, but that FOIL request just came in actually today. It took some time. And what we learned is these two courts on Mary Lee Drive exist closer to Mary Lee than the relief we're requesting, and exist by virtue of variances. The first variance on 419 Ox Pasture, and I'll zoom in. That's this one where my cursor is now. Approves for a pool within 40 feet of Mary Lee Drive, and in doing so, notes specifically that the applicant encounters practical difficulty in using his property due to the fact that it had frontage on Ox Pasture and Merrily Drive. The parcel effectively had no rear yard, and it notes there are other tennis courts located in the neighborhood on parcels in non-conforming locations, particularly the parcel adjoining to the subject parcel, which is 427 Ox Pasture, the one where my cursor is now. That also benefited from a variance permitting a tennis court within 30 feet of Mary Leah Drive, noting again the constraints on that lot by virtue of its being buttressed between Mary Lee Drive, Ox Pasture, and in that lot's case, the side yard as well on Captain's Neck. So I think it's important to note three things as we consider this application. And obviously I have to consider it now in the context of the decision you all just made. One, we are reducing the relief requested from a 40-foot setback. We're asking only for a 44-foot setback now. That's a 10% difference. And in addition, you must consider it in light of these other variances. In denying the application that just immediately preceded this one, this board noted some important factors, and I'd like to distinguish this application from that one. First, it was said by a member of the board that Cooper's Neck, that its corner lot on Cooper's Neck was a prominent part of the neighborhood. This cannot be less prominent. It's the last lot on Mary Lee Drive. There is one house in the world that has to pass it to get home, and that's this home right here. All the other lots on Ox Pasture, obviously on Mary Leah, never will ever have to see or hear this tennis. Will it change how the neighborhood looks and sounds? That was a point raised by this board a minute ago. No, this street right now has 4 tennis courts on it. 2 of them are closer to Mary Lee Drive than we're requesting, are within that distance by virtue of a variance. This will not at all change the character of this neighborhood. This neighborhood exists with tennis courts close to Mary Lee Drive. And in the variances that I discussed, it's pointed out specifically that Mary Lee Drive is a less traveled, certainly not a busy street, certainly not as busy as Cooper's Neck. The board is worried about precedent, and I understand. It's clear that this precedent on the application immediately preceding would be setting something that this board would and future boards would have to consider when considering similar applications. You consider precedent because implicit in that is that you are to a degree held to precedent. That due process requires that each lot be given similar consideration and that it be applied equally. If precedent is a factor, then there is no greater, I can't think of an application that had greater precedent than this one. Given the fact that 2 lots down and 3 lots down, the same relief has been granted by this board. I think another way to distinguish this from the previous application is the area of the tennis court that's actually within the setback. If you will have noticed on that previous application, the bulk of the tennis court was in the setback. It cut it long ways and, about a quarter in. The bulk of the tennis court is within permitted setbacks, and only roughly a little over a third is within the required setback. So I think coupled with the standards I cited last time, in consideration of the existing character of this neighborhood, the fact that exact similar relief has been granted by this board, 1 lot, 2 lots down and 3 lots down, consideration that the unique aspect of this lot, that being that it's literally the last lot on the block. And as I said, there's one home in the world that has to pass this tennis court. And that home has tennis courts that are closer to it than the court we're proposing. In light of all that, I think, and the record I made on the previous application, I think it's entirely reasonable to grant this relief, even in spite of the denial you just offered. This is a wholly different application, wholly different circumstances, and the impact of the relief is wholly different than that of the application on Cooper's Neck. Obviously, I didn't have much time to make these comparisons, but as you were discussing it, it popped into my head with every point you made. This is a far different request for relief.
Could you tell us the dates when the two precedents you're referring to, when those variances were granted?
Yeah, they were granted some time ago, admittedly. They were granted in 1981 and 1989. But the zoning
Thank you.
has not changed since then. It was considered under the same zoning scheme as this is. That is that the required setback was 90 feet.
So do any other board members have questions or comments or concerns?
Yes, could I see the site plan again, please? Not just the aerial view,
Sure.
because I must admit that my orientation for this property was from Ox Pasture. And we've referred to it multiple times as Mary Lake. Where are we going with this? Is this going, will this home, is the home staying in its original spot?
No, there's a proposed new structure that's here. The current home.
And
I'll
are
just
we
go back.
talking about a home that will have an entry on Mary Lee Drive? Or are we talking about a home that will have an entry on Ox Pasture Road?
The home that exists
Front and rear
currently.
yard in the end.
Yeah, the home that exists currently will have an entrance, has an entrance on Mary Lee Drive. The proposed new structure will not. Will only have an entrance on Ox Pasture, as you see here. If you pull up the aerial map, I'll zoom in and you can see that there is an entrance off of Mary Lee Drive.
Right.
But that is not the case with the proposed. As you see, the entrance is strictly off of Ox Pasture. And that's another thing to note. The one home that is affected by this home currently has a pool and a home much closer to it than the proposed pool and home, which will be further back. So arguably, the finished development will have less impact on that neighbor than the current home. As this home will be moved up to within 90 feet, which is the minimum setback from Ox Pasture. So we're actually reducing the structures and the placement of the distance from existing structures to that one affected neighbor than currently exists. It'll be a reduction, an increase in the distance.
I think you can develop the site without needing a variance. I think you can rotate the pool, rotate the tennis court 90 degrees, put it right back up against the accessory setback line, move the pool in between the house and the tennis court. Maybe it gets rotated. Maybe it's less rectangular in shape. You have some space on your side yards to spread out. I think you spread the house out a little bit. It's an H right now. Maybe it's a little bit more of a U. And the pool becomes part of the tennis court created by the wings, the new wings that we have on the north side of the house. I don't know if you need two garages, right? Is like a single car to the west and a double car to the east. Overall, and very different from the previous applicant, you've got a fresh blank slate here. I think you should explore no variances needed. I think it's.
I don't think that's the case. If you are looking at these structures and keeping them all within the accessory setback, they're all going to be really on top of each other. Bear in mind that we have septic constraints as well. I think that this relief is reasonable, and this layout is reasonable, given the way other homes are laid out in the neighborhood, given the way that the other homes have been developed in the area. And I don't think it's fair to sort of bunch everything in this small area when this lot is so burdened, and when everyone else on the block has been giving exactly the configuration that my client is looking for. I do appreciate the input, and trust me, that has been explored. After our last meeting, you had suggested reconfiguration of the lot with that U design. And the architect did explore that, and it was just too, everything was too on top of each other. And it didn't create a really either a safe or a reasonable layout for the property. And I think that the owner of this lot should not be held to that standard, again, when everyone else in the lot is given has been afforded the ability to this configuration. But again, I do appreciate the input. And
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of has been made tonight of just because someone else has it doesn't mean you get it, right? Sanitary for the house can go in the horseshoe of the parking court. You'll need obviously your dry well for the swimming pool that can go off to the east or the west of the pool. I don't think sanitary is the issue here. I think the house is the issue. I think the house can be designed differently to accommodate a site plan that doesn't need a variance. You know, we're not the ARB, but you know, I don't know. The house could use a little look at, in my opinion.
Joyce, do you have any questions or comments?
No, not at this point.
I think that the question, and I understand your points, but the question is, when working with a blank slate, is this the minimum variance that's feasible for the applicant? And you know, that's I think that's more of a challenge than this applicant to this point has been willing to accept. You know, coming back with a tennis court that's 44 feet from Mary Lee instead of 40 feet, you know, doesn't really feel like much of an effort to minimize the setback relief. And we can compare this to other variance situations, but you know, some of those are 40 years old, and you know, sometimes it's hard to make a direct comparison. We don't know if there was an existing house there and then they asked for a tennis court, meaning that, you know, they were constrained with their location. Here, the applicant doesn't have any constraints. He's working with a vacant piece of land. I think that's the concern.
I'm expressing some I want to express some confusion. Are we still considering the property as having 2 front yards?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
It does have 2 front yards. Mary Lee, you know, arguably is a less traveled road than most other roads. So the impact on the neighborhood is, or you know, it's to be considered that it's not the same as some of the other roads. It's less traveled. You know, there was a neighbor who did express you know, concern, and you know, they live on Mary Lee, and you know, it's a balancing, like we said before. This is a balancing, but I think I do agree with Luke that there has not been much of an effort on the part of the developer working with a vacant piece of land to minimize the variance relief necessary or feasible.
Chair, there is an attendee who would like to speak. Linda Riley would like to speak regarding this application. Would you like me to bring her in?
Sure.
Should both attorneys be in at the same time?
I'm not sure yet what, if Linda is representing a neighbor or.
I am representing a neighbor. I am representing a neighbor.
I'm
I-
concerned I may have interrupted Mr. Benincasa too when I asked my last question.
Oh,
Yeah,
I'm
that's
not
the.
sure he was able to finish his thought.
Would you like me to?
Carl, if you don't mind, could we exit, your screen and have Linda come in, and of course we'll invite you back shortly.
Of course.
I represent the neighbor who did speak at the original hearing. He lives directly across the street, and he is the one that's most clearly impacted by this. And the primary motivation that he had for opposing this was the noise. He does have a tennis court next door to him. He has to live with that. It's already there. It was there when he built his house, but the noise is disturbing to him. And he does not look forward to having that noise multiplied. So that's his primary objection. But I want to just second a few things that you said and point out one other thing. It is a blank slate. There are ways of putting these things together so that the impact is more clearly experienced by the homeowner, who, again, we don't even know who that is, because I think it's a builder who's building this. I mean, maybe there's an end user, but I don't think so. Certainly Mr. Benincasa can address that, but I also want to say that there were other circumstances in those 1980 variances that were granted down the end of Mary Lee Lane. The first one that was granted, in fact, at the discussion at the hearing on that, really emphasized that Mary Lee Drive did not exist when that homeowner bought the home and built the home oriented toward Ox Pasture. In fact, for that person, when they bought the home, there was no road back there, and the tennis court would have been perfectly allowable in the location where it is. And it was only after that, after 1983, that Mary Lee was developed. It was developed after, in fact, the dwelling was in 1959 in that particular case, and Mary Lee was developed after that. It was the same owner that had the original dwelling. Also, it was upzoned in 1983. It's not exactly accurate that it wasn't, that the zoning hasn't changed there. So that first one was granted, and there were quite different circumstances, I think, then. And the second one kind of copycatted what the first one did shortly thereafter. And that was the one that now fronts on Captain's Neck. So I do think that there are different circumstances for sure, and that it is a front yard it is a front yard, it is traveled, it is clearly going to be experienced by my client, and he's disturbed by the proliferation of tennis courts in this neighborhood. So if it's built without variance relief, there's nothing we can say, but it's a substantial variance that he's requesting. And that's really all I had to say at this point.
That's helpful information about the timing of Mary Lee.
Yeah, thank you. I think because of Mary Lee, either way, for the applicant to have a tennis court, they will require variance relief to have an accessory structure in the front yard. I don't see any way around that. I think there's two questions. Would we grant variance relief to have an accessory structure in the front yard when Mary Lee, it represents a front yard. And then the second question is, there's a 90-foot setback. Would we grant variance relief from the setback as well, in addition to the front yard variance? So I don't think that they can have a tennis court without some relief. The question we're also considering is how much of a variance from the 90-foot setback would be allowed. So that's also for your question, Julia, when we were talking about, yes, they definitely need relief from the front yard in two forms: an accessory structure in the front yard and an accessory structure, less than 90 feet from the front yard.
Would you like me to bring Mr. Benincasa back in and take Ms. Riley out?
Sure. Linda, are you done?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a brief statement.
No, thank you. That was helpful about Mary Lee. Certainly, Jolie.
Mr. Benincasa, you're coming back in as a panelist. Mr. Benincasa, you can turn on your microphone. Okay.
So first, the variance relief was granted when 90 feet was setback. Whether an upzone occurred between one or the other, at least one was granted with that. Mary Lee has been there since the 60s, from what I can tell. And there's no indication that the owner of the lot, when the variance was granted, didn't buy it when Mary Lee was in place. So that argument does not really have much of an impact. And if in fact it does have an impact, then all owners on Mary Lee Drive are grandfathered into that. They didn't know Mary Lee was going to be there when the lot was subdivided, and it's further reason to grant this application. So I don't think that's a compelling argument. As Ms. Riley said an hour ago, one neighbor in opposition is not a reason to deny a variance. And I think that's it. Again, Mary Lee Drive was there when this variance was requested. And there's nothing that says that the owner of the lot, when the variance was requested, owned it prior to Mary Lee being there, which was developed a significant amount of time before the variance was granted. At least 25 years. So again, I don't think that point by Mary Lee is really an important one, and it needs to be considered in context. And if this board does think it's important, then my client is entitled to it as much as the owner of the neighboring lot when the variance was granted. I want to also point out that her client is benefiting in the fact that there'll be less traffic on Mary Leah, as we are not seeking to have an entrance for Mary Leah. So it'll actually, again, the house is being moved further away, the pool is being moved further away, and the driveway is being taken away. So he'll have a quieter street than he does right now, if the relief is granted. And this is not a vacant lot. I know there are plans for development, but it's not a vacant lot. There's a house and a pool there.
No, I understand, but
I definitely hear the board's concerns, and I will certainly bring it to my client, who, without being prodded in any direction, voluntarily reduced the setback, and I'll see if there's further relief. We certainly want to be good neighbors. Miss Riley's, the concerns of Miss Riley's client and Miss Riley are important to us. So I am happy to, if you want to hold this open once more, I will go back to my client and see if we can do a little better.
Okay, so let's motion to adjourn for all purposes.
So moved.
Case number 3116. And a second?
A second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you all. Have a good night.
Have a good night. So next we have case number 3124, 80 Harvest Lane. Is the applicant here?
Let me check. I have Linda Riley's hand up. I'm not sure if she's representing this case. Let's see.
Could I just say that the application that they put in did not answer the question if they had been given other variances. And I took it upon myself to go to the building department, and there was, as the neighbor had intimated, that a freestanding garage was built with a variance. But the applicant actually has to fill out the application. I'm not going to write that in for them. It just, to me, I wish we would know all the information and that we would not receive applications where all the questions have not been answered. All the questions have been answered. It makes it very difficult to do our work.
Maybe confusing it with another application, but I thought I saw a revision or an additional information from them highlighting the variance.
Oh.
Susan, you're muted.
On a piece of paper or in the Dropbox? Never mind, Luke, that's too much to ask.
No,
Okay,
I'm sorry. I don't, and I may not be remembering it correctly, but I in my head, I think that we did see additional information from them, because I agree with you, Susan, the application was very light on answers the first time around.
And I actually, when I went, I realized I actually knew the person who lived there before, and I've been there. It makes more sense to me now, but if the neighbor hadn't said something, I wasn't going to go to the building department and go in a card file. Although honestly, I think it's probably a good idea if you have the time. Anyway, that's all I have to say before we get going.
Right. I tried to promote Linda and she declined coming in. So I don't know if her hand is up for something else, but I don't believe that she's representing this.
Is anybody else here for 80 Harvest Lane?
Is anyone here for 80 Harvest Lane Lux Construction and Design? I don't think so. I don't think anyone's here.
You know, I thought that the applicant or the woman who was presenting kept saying that they had met the requirements that the application required. And I had a feeling maybe there was a misunderstanding, that they just put it in, they appeared, and maybe they didn't even know they were supposed to come back. Is that possible? It is. I'm serious.
Okay, why don't we, let me motion to adjourn. To adjourn case number 3124, and we'll reach out to them.
Did you make them so moved?
Yeah, I motion to adjourn case number 3124, 80 Harvest Lane.
I'll second it.
And all in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Next, we have case number 3115, which I believe was adjourned pending a revised notice. So we'll move on to case number 3125, 41 Van Brun Street. Is the applicant or a representative here?
Yes. Martha Reichert is coming in.
Good evening, everyone.
How are you, Martha?
Hi, Martha.
Hi. So how would you like me to present the application? How would you like me to move forward with this?
Screen sharing and presenting the application would be wonderful.
All right, let me share my screen. All right.
Ms. Reichart, are you an attorney for the applicant or the architect?
Yes, sorry. Let me introduce myself. So my name is Martha Reichert. I am attorney and agent for the applicant, Toomey Latham Shea, 33 West 2nd Street, Riverhead, New York. So I'll start with the survey here. we have a single-family residence here on Van Brunt Street. The applicants, Kathy and Michael Anderson, who are in the waiting room as well and available to answer questions, have proposed a 640 square foot addition to their home, to the existing residence. It is a single story addition. And the impetus for it is that Mrs. Anderson's parents are in their 90s. And in order for them to age in place and stay with their family in terms of being cared for, they need a first floor bedroom, which the existing house doesn't have. This house is, I couldn't find a pre-CO, but in looking at the aerials, it appears to me that this house most likely predates zoning. It shows up on the 1962 aerials. And it's a little bit unclear whether or not it's visible in the 1930 aerial. So we know that it was built between 1930 and 1962 at a minimum. It's typical of many of the homes within the R 7.5 neighborhood. And what the relief that we need for this one is side yard variances. The way it works in the R 7.5 neighborhood, right, is that side yard is calculated using a formula, but at a minimum, it has to be 15 feet. And so if you also look at the way that the house is positioned on the lot, even though the proposed addition is square, the house itself creates sort of a tapering side yard as you move towards the rear. So in the front yard, the house would end up, the addition would end up being a 10-foot setback. And then it tapers down to 7.8 feet. In addition to the side yard variances that it needs, the existing house is over GFA, so it will need a GFA variance. And that's the
Think you could
location.
give us the numbers of these requests? I'm looking at the application. It's just,
Sure.
thank you.
All right, so we need a 315 square foot variance for lot coverage. The resulting lot coverage would be 3,636 square feet, where 3,321 is the maximum allowed. And then we need a GFA variance of 1,174 square feet for, again, this is a 640 square foot first floor addition, which would result in GFA of 3,968 feet, where 2,794 feet is the maximum allowed. Those are the variances that we're seeking. If you don't have any further questions, I'll continue. We've had
Martha, I can't see in your screen share, I can't really see the backyard.
Sure. I had focused on the front, but let me take you to the
Yeah.
backyard.
Okay, there we go. Okay.
Make it big enough so
Mhm.
you can see everything. This is the first variance application on this property. There's no prior variance decisions. Everything else has been built as of right. And I want to add that we have submitted to the record 9 letters of support from neighbors. And so if you'd like, I'll go through the balancing test and the variance standards. So with respect to whether or not this addition would create any sort of detriment to the community, looking at the immediate adjacent neighbors, the most impacted one, potentially impacted one, is the neighbor to the west. And that property itself has a swimming pool. If I'll switch over to the aerial, if you don't mind. So can everyone see, or do I need to make this a little bit bigger?
I don't think it came up.
It didn't come up yet, Martha.
Hold on, sorry, just 1 second. Let me share. Okay. Thanks for your patience. Did it go back just to the survey? All right, let me try one more time.
Same survey.
Same survey. All right, let's see if it'll let me switch to Southampton Town GIS. How about now?
We can see, we have the
All right.
aerial.
So where my cursor is right here is the aerial. As you'll see, the neighbor to the west has a swimming pool and patio, pretty much coming right up to the shared property line. There is a tall, mature evergreen hedge that separates it. The proposed addition would be right here in this area of the house. In general, I just wanted to sort of, let me zoom out a little bit on this aerial. Just within this sort of smaller block, you have several different houses. Again, most of them pre-existing non-conforming, but some of them are additions, and they all sit less than 10 feet from their property lines. And I'm only showing this to you to sort of give a flavor for the character of the neighborhood, especially in this area where the lots are, my client's lot is of an average size. The house is also of an average size for this neighborhood. And as I mentioned earlier, 9 different neighbors submitted letters of support for this application. With
But we
respect,
just, your client's house is already over in GFA, is that right?
correct.
So why is that typical? Didn't you just say that?
Well, I said that the size is typical for the neighborhood.
What
if
does
you
that
just-
mean? Really, come on, that just, is it typical of what? What
Typical for the
neighborhood?
larger, broader neighborhood in terms of that its size would not
Okay.
appear out of scale on this street or in any of the surrounding side streets.
So all the neighborhood, all the houses next door are all out of scale? Or I don't get it.
Well, I'm not saying that it's out of scale. I'm not saying the other houses are out of scale. I mean, this isn't a unique zoning district because the lots are generally smaller, narrower than what you find in other parts of the village. And
Right.
so you have, in general, I would say that this particular district is characterized by houses that are more closely spaced. And so this variance request itself, although I understand your perspective in terms of the numbers, we're looking at something that doesn't go beyond the pale of what you would commonly find walking around this neighborhood. In fact, if you look at where my client's property is, I mean, you have in the immediate vicinity and neighbors who received notice, very similar setbacks.
Very similar setbacks to what you're requesting or
In setbacks that are less than 10 feet from the property line. And I didn't prepare a more detailed analysis, but I can if that's something the board wants. I'm really just showing it in terms of the character of the neighborhood, that, it's typical to find houses that are very close to one of their side yards. But in terms of, again, the detriment to the community, I think the fact that you have 9 neighbors supporting it, that the adjacent property is improved with a swimming pool that comes right up to the property line. There isn't, it's again about balancing the benefit to the applicant versus the detriment to the community. And I don't think we're seeing a large detriment to the community with this neighborhood. And I think that the benefit that the applicant seeks in order to provide a first floor bedroom for their elderly parents to age in place, that I think that benefit outweighs any potential detriment. I don't know if there's anyone here to speak on the applicant aside from my clients. But I'm looking at it right here, right now. And I think that you have something that I think the zoning board is probably going to see more often, because the need for a first floor bedroom for, especially as the baby boomer generation ages as well, aging in place is a new trend that we're seeing all throughout different communities. How can we create this first floor space that is handicap accessible, that continues to provide quality of life? That's what we're seeking to do here. If we could accomplish it through a second floor bedroom, then that would be a different story. But here, Mrs. Anderson's parents are in their early 90s. And this will provide them with quality of life and a safe place where they can remain with their family and have access to the outdoors. And so that's what we're seeking to do here.
Ms.
Okay, do any
Reichert,
board members have any questions or concerns?
questions?
Just for clarity's sake, Ms. Reichert, could you put your cursor over the property? I just
Sure,
wanna
here,
make sure that
let me
I'm in the
zoom in a little
area.
bit more. This is the subject property right here where my cursor is.
Okay, thank you.
So I'm sympathetic with to what the applicants are trying to do here. Was any consideration given to converting the garage?
I don't think we looked at the idea of creating an accessory dwelling and converting that into you know, a habitable space. I think one of the concerns is that at that age, the idea is really to be able to provide care, and in order to do that, it sort of requires being in the same building and earshot. So, you know, I can bring in the applicants if you'd like, and you can hear from them themselves, because they can speak best to the kind of care that's needed and what their intentions and goals are. Could we please let in Kathy and Michael Anderson?
Andersons, if you want to turn on your camera and your microphone, please.
They're muted.
Yes, you're going to need to unmute for us, please.
Hello?
Hello.
Oh, good.
Oh, you got us?
Got it.
Yes.
Yes. Hi, I'm Michael Anderson. My wife is next to me, Kathy Anderson. We're residents of the village, well, in Southampton for 31 years. In this house, presently 22 years. We wish to get this approved, this application approved for Kathy's parents, because they are elderly. They need a lot of help at home. They live in Nassau County, and we need to get them back to live with us. And I'll let Kathy explain the rest.
Hello. I am the only daughter. I am a nurse. I worked here at Southampton Hospital for 31 years. And even though we're all taking care of my parents, and, you know, they're right now very healthy in the fact of they don't have dementia and they can ambulate, but their vision is getting worse. They also are not able to drive anymore. So up right before COVID, they were driving, doing their own food shopping, and now they really are unable to do that. And we all try to share the responsibilities, but as you know, things are not going to get better for them. My dad unfortunately fell and broke his hip. He's with a walker, but again, he gets in the shower, he can do things limited, you know, with help. And I just feel that I'd like to give them the best, you know, ending to their life that I could. They don't want to go into assisted living. They've been married for 65 years. And, you know, this would really be a wonderful opportunity for us to take care of them. And that's what we need to do it.
And as far as the garage, I've never considered the garage as a building for them. I always thought that couldn't happen. I didn't even think it was an option for us to do. So that's why it's never been considered.
I don't think it's allowed under zoning, unfortunately.
I don't think it is, but I haven't done the analysis, but I don't believe that an accessory dwelling unit is currently allowed.
And I do have to say, with
as Martha said, I really need to be closer to them than them being, not that the garage is that far away, but it would be nicer to have them in the same house where I could hear them and be closer.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you for listening.
Chair, there is another hand up in the attendee pool for this application. Judith Maislis, or I don't know how to pronounce her last name, but would you like me to promote her?
Sure, you can let, please let Kathy and Michael exit and
Okay.
Martha exit, and then Martha, you can return, but we're going to hear from the public.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought so. Who's Judith?
Okay. Let me pull the Andersons out here. Okay, Miss Maislis.
Yes. Hi, do you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, hi.
Could you turn on your camera for us, please?
I can't because I'm on my iPhone.
Okay.
Anyway, if you want your parents to live with you, do you need another over 1,000 square feet more than what you have? And I don't know what they have, but I only know what they're trying to exceed beyond the legal limits. To have a bedroom for your parents and a bathroom. This house is built to the max as I see it, because I face out into the back of my house. And I'm not quite sure that they're not using their parents as an excuse to do something more than they want for this house, to sell it.
Judith, you're the neighbor to the north.
Yeah. And I face it in the back, and none of this essentially affects me. But I see this house and it's built to the max. And, I understand you might want your parents to be able to live there, and I'm happy if they could find a little area somewhere in that yard that they can have a bedroom and a bath. But do they need all this much they're trying to build for these two people?
No, we hear you. Thank you.
Doesn't this, we've listened to the reason the applicant is giving. But when I look at the coverage of their lot compared to everyone else's around, it's already pretty covered, and they were asking for other things.
It's way covered.
It's very, oh, I didn't realize you were still in there. Very covered. And I was surprised in watching the aerial that it was so evident.
No, we don't usually have requests for lot coverage variances. In fact, they're unusual.
Well, and I feel like saying, what about an elevator? That's none of my business, but who lives in this place? I don't know. Everyone has aging parents or their parents died. So it's not it's not a tremendous hardship. I just feel like that's really not what we should be talking about, but we should be talking about, should we allow such a big variance?
Susan, have a heart.
I don't think that's my job. That's not fair, Luke.
I'm sorry.
That's really inappropriate. I'm out.
Okay,
I'm leaving the
I'm
meeting.
sorry.
Wait, stick around, Susan. We'll move on. Joyce or Julia, do you have any thoughts at this stage?
Chair, Ms. Reichert would like to be heard again. Would you like me to bring her in?
Yeah, of course.
I think it's possible that if the structure were pushed north a little bit, they could reduce the need for the front yard setback variance.
We don't need a front yard setback variance. I had put
Really?
that, I had put it on the application, but when the notice was prepared, they didn't add that. And I guess that's because the existing house already extends further back. I'm sorry, not further back, but is
It's
closer to
further
the front
forward. Well,
yard.
still,
Further
anything
forward.
new should be in conformance.
I agree. That's why I put it on the application, but the building department, when they wrote up their notice, did not include it. I have it on the application. It's a pretty minimal amount. It's 3 feet from the front yard, whereas the house is already there. I think that may have been an architectural decision that was made. Would you like me to screen share again so you can see the survey?
No, I mean, it's on the agenda.
The front yard is? I didn't see it in the notice.
Yes, it is. It is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, to a further southern front yard setback of 6.7 feet where 30 is required.
All right, good. Then it's there.
Yeah, so I think you could push this structure back and not need that front yard setback.
Sure.
You know, the architectural plans are included. I'm struggling to see a like a bed wall, you know, for the parents.
Do you
I
want
don't
me to
know if
pull?
it's
I have the plans if you'd like me to screen share.
yeah, screen share.
All right. All right, let me just switch to the building plans. So, you know, I'd like to at least point out, I know that we're sort of really looking very closely at the amount of relief that we're looking for from the side yard. But even at that amount of relief, we are not seeking pyramid relief because we haven't penetrated the sky plane. So I do want to point that out in terms of the zoning on this lot, that even at sort of, you know, this much of a variance, we're not coming across with pyramid issues. Let me go further up. Hold on just one second. So here is the proposed bedroom. As you can see, there's the bathroom, there's a separate laundry area, a walk-in closet. The plan is to have not just a bed in there, but also to give them a little bit of space for their own privacy, comfort, you know, a small sitting area. And then they have, you know, a stair, you know, stairs that will lead out to the backyard.
Sure. So if the whole thing were pushed north, where you entered in from the existing dining room, say, and that little corridor was more of a hallway, right? And then the walk-in closet, the laundry, and the bathroom are kind of you know, lumped in a line where if they were lumped more as a square, then maybe that 9'2" width would be a little more usable. And I think as we push the building north, it can also kind of turn the corner and grab a little space behind that great room. And that wouldn't block any windows there. I think it can be laid out a little bit differently, that you know, that it doesn't look like a fantastic use of space in the proposed plan right now.
You know, I like the feedback and I appreciate it. I wish we could have discussed this a little bit at the work session, but you know, and I think that given the way the property is laid out, because the, you know, it's not completely square on the lot, the residence, that even if we push the addition further to the north, I think because sort of the setback tapers towards the rear, that we would end up looking for an even greater variance. I believe that's.
Yeah, I mean, maybe you're looking for a greater side yard variance, but you're not looking anymore for a street side variance, and perhaps if the planning is laid out a little differently, you can reduce your area request.
I think those are, suggestions that we can explore, discuss it with the architect. I know that, they lay out things for certain reasons. One of them is that, as you can see, right over here is a new cellar entrance. So, what I would propose to the board, if they have more feedback, I'd love to get it. If we can eliminate that front yard variance, that makes sense. And I would hope the board would be happy to see that. And, and we can look to see how much it can be shifted further north.
Yeah, or forget about shifting it north. Just move it, pan back up so we can see the whole thing
Sure.
again. Okay, so leave it right where it is, right? Still enter from the dining room, but that area then below your new entry, that block that is adjacent to the existing sitting room, that can be your bathroom, your laundry, your walk-in closet. It can occupy that square space instead of a long, a long rectangular space. Then you're left with the whole rest of that structure, the full width, the full 10, 16 feet wide structure by like 24 feet as their bedroom space, and that leaves more than enough room for a bed wall on the solid wall behind the dining room, the existing great room, and then a sitting area, a little living room area that moves them out to the backyard, and maybe it gets a little bit smaller.
But Martha, let me put this in context before we redesign what's there. GFA variances of this degree and lot coverage variances are unusual in the village. You have a 2,800 square foot house. It's entirely possible that you will need to redesign within the existing GFA, whatever that might mean to the homeowner and their architect and you. But it's a big ask to exceed current GFA by over 1,100 square feet.
Well,
To me, it's basically a non-starter. Okay, I've as long as I've been on the board, it's very unusual to grant a GFA variance. The village has been concerned over the past 10 years with GFA. They have reduced GFA, and the standards for obtaining a variance from the GFA requirements might have to do with an entirely different situation. And I don't want to hypothesize where a GFA variance might be allowed, but your application is asking for a lot coverage variance, unusual, a GFA variance, unusual, and combine that with moving too close to the side yard. This is not something I've seen. And you have a 2,800 square foot house. I understand the need, and I'm, believe me, very sympathetic to the need. But you have a 2,800 square foot house, which is already larger than the current GFA. So I'd love there to be a way for the Andersons to have their parents live with them. But I think it has to do with going back to the architect and saying, we need to work within our existing footprint to do this, because this is to me, it's a very big ask. I've not seen an application like this.
All right. Well,
especially not in the 7.5 zoning area.
Sure. What I'd like to do is ask the board to hold this over and not close the record tonight. I'd like to
absolutely.
I'd like to confer with my clients and, and take in the board's feedback and see what we can do and come back to you guys.
Then that was my personal, take on it. Susan, Julia, Joyce, Luke, if you have a different viewpoint, please, express it. But I have never seen a GFA variance at this level.
Agreed.
I agree with you, Mark, and, there's got to be some way internally to make this okay. If that's what they want. I'm not sure what they want.
I don't know, Kat, are my clients raising their hands or?
No, their hands are not up.
Okay.
Oh, actually, no, wait, they just put their hand up.
I mean, what I can say is, I've worked on enough homes. 3,000 square feet is a lot of square footage. I mean, I've worked with builders who have, constructed 4-bedroom homes in 3,000 square feet. So I'm not finding a 2,800 square foot house, particularly restrictive here to allow elderly parents to move in. So I understand the benefit, but I'm not sure the solution has to be expanding the house beyond the allowable GFA and beyond the allowable lot coverage and beyond the allowable side yard setback.
All right. Is there any other feedback or comments that the board would like to give us?
Julia, do you have anything, or?
I have nothing to add this evening. I'm in agreement with the comments that you've made, Mark.
Okay, so why don't we, Martha, if you don't mind, let's adjourn for all purposes and meet again.
All right, that sounds good.
Okay, so can I have a motion to adjourn for all purposes, or I motion to adjourn for all purposes, case number 3125, 41 Van Brunt Street?
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so we're moving on to case number 3126, 53 Layton Avenue. Jolie, is the applicant here for?
Yes.
53
Yes,
Layton?
Robert Fischetti is coming in again.
Great.
Hello
So
again.
the Andersons have to be taken out.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Again, Robert Fischetti for the applicant, 53 Layton Avenue. So this is, actually, I'm going to share my screen. Okay, so hopefully you can see my screen. So this is 53 Layton Avenue. It's a 9,713 square foot lot in the MF 20 multifamily 20 district over there on Layton Avenue. So here in the aerial in the orange box is the subject property. As you can see, it backs up onto Eel Pot Alley. I'm just going to give you a couple other views. So this is the same property with the question mark on it. And then here's the front. Here's the view from Eel Pot. And then as you can see in a better photo, Eel Pot behind this property is not improved. And you can also see that on the other side of Eel Pot is the school, the Catholic school. So the proposal is for a 14 by 24 foot swimming pool to be located in the required front yard. So there's no setback relief required. It was the first thing that I said to the client was, there's room, you don't need to break any setbacks. So it's all within the setbacks except for the pool equipment is over here on the side, and that requires a 7-foot variance from the required 20 to 13 feet just to tuck it up against the house there. No lot coverage variance is required. Since the last work session, we did, without changing the location of the pool or anything, just submit this updated site plan with a little bit of extra detail, but again, the same proposed pool. I did also, since the work session, get a chance to speak with Peter Delahunt, who is the owner of 47 Layton, which is right here, just immediately to the west. And he did put in an email to the village in support of this application. The two properties to the west, this 47, and then I think it's 50, I think it's 53. I submitted both of those properties have swimming pools that benefit from variances. Just to give you some context on the neighborhood. Basically the same ask here, same size lots. The houses are pretty much situated the same. As you can see on the site plan, a lot of the rear deck is being removed. And then we do meet the required front yard. So it's just to locate the pool in the back.
To me, there's an alley, not a street. Can't you argue that? Is that a street? That's an alley. Alleys are behind houses. I don't know. I went over there. I was amazed by the Catholic school, but I do think if you call it an alley, alleys are traditionally behind houses, and therefore it would not be a street. And then you wouldn't need a variance except for the pool equipment. That's all I have to say.
Yeah. Well, the idea that the street actually ends a little bit prior to the backyard here, and that it's not a highly traveled, call it a street, an alley, a road, and that the applicant, complies with the front yard setback. I mean, I don't have a problem with this pool. I think that it's, thoughtful, and I'd vote yes to it. And my only question is, I'm just looking at where you located the pool equipment. I have some question about whether or not you need a variance with pool equipment, or there might be a better location, but I'm not sure it matters that much.
I think it would have to be, it's going to hit the 20 over here. It's going to hit the required front over here. It's going to hit the 20 over here. I think that was sort of the easiest way to tuck it away.
Yeah, I agree. And if it's tucked there and surrounded by some landscaping and
this
is it the neighbor to the
yes,
the
this
west
side,
that wrote the letter of support?
correct. Yeah.
Do any other board members have any questions or comments?
No, to your point and Susan's point, it really is just a paper road at that point. Anyway, pavement ends.
Yeah, I mean, you couldn't really even drive past where this backyard is located.
No.
Because it's a grass area behind there.
I have no
Yeah, Rob, go
objection.
back to that photo that showed what it looks like back there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, there you are.
Yeah, there's nothing there.
So that's the grass area. That's directly to essentially the north of this property.
Exactly. Yes. This green gate goes to the property. This is all right behind the property.
Joyce, do you have any questions or concerns?
No, not at all.
And Julia, did we ask if you have any questions or concerns?
Not at this time, thank you.
But is it okay to close it for decision?
Yes, from my perspective, yes.
Okay, so
Mr.
I'll
Chairman,
motion-
I just didn't know if there was anybody in the public.
Yeah, thank you for reminding me. Let's find out. Jolie, is there anybody from the public that wishes to be heard?
Yeah, there's a hand up, but it was up from the previous application, so I don't believe it's pertaining to this application. I could be wrong.
Is there a name?
Judith Maislis.
No, that was from.
Oh, right, her hand is still up. I think it's up in error. So no, I don't believe so.
Okay, so I would make a motion to close for decision case number 3126 53 Layton Avenue.
Second.
And all
So
in
moved.
favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you, Rob.
Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Was that the last application of the evening? Because we have on our agenda the case number 3127 220 Hampton Road needs to be renoticed.
Oh, that needs to be renoticed.
That's the note on the agenda.
There's I think that Siu Lu was here for that application. I promoted her already. I could take her out though if you can't hear it.
Well,
But also,
this is my question is this, and I guess it's for you, Jeffrey. If the notice has to be revised, can we hear this? Do we have jurisdiction?
Well,
How could we?
I apologize. In the other matter that had gone forward tonight, there had been notice provided to the surrounding neighbors. My understanding from this week is that there was going to be new notice done entirely for this proceeding, and the agenda then indicated that it was to be adjourned. So I think anybody who would have looked at the website would have thought this case was being adjourned tonight in any event.
Excuse me, could I please say something?
Of course, we just don't know that we have jurisdiction to hear what you have to say. So that's what we're trying to figure out.
I'm looking on the website, on the agenda, my case is not adjourned. I waited from 6 o'clock to now.
Jeffrey, can we hear what
I'm just looking back at prior notes. I thought that the building inspector had spoken to the applicant previously. I believe I'm correct on this application, and that they were going to be revising their notice. There had been prior emails about that. So I did not understand that this was going forward even from before. This is different if, if the notice was not correct before, then I don't think the board would be able to proceed.
He told me yesterday, he told me to write a letter to clarify about the exceptional, special exception use. And he called me yesterday. I did provide the letter to explain more in detail what we are seeking, like the special exception use, what is the code, and what we are seeking. And the letter was electronically mailed out. And I also went to the building department and dropped out the letter.
Mr. Chairman, if it's helpful, I believe this was noticed as a special exception. The denial also includes an area variance. I think that was missed when it was noticed. So we made a note that it was going to be renoticed to add that area variance.
Could I speak just about the special exception use, which is properly advertised?
No, we don't have proper notice. We don't have the public on notice that this hearing is going to be held. So we really can't take into consideration what you might have to say. It's just not a proper procedure for us.
But I just went on the website and I downloaded the agenda. It didn't say it's adjourned.
We're not in control of what is posted, so I would apologize, but that isn't, we're not doing that. But I have a question for Mr. Wallach. In terms of I believe that the application was confusing, and it indicated what I thought was a complete change of use, not a special exception.
No, it's
special exception use.
Where does it? I couldn't tell what was going on.
Well, if I'm allowed to speak.
No, I'm asking Mr. Wallach. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I apologize because I only first looked at this application today, but I do understand it to be a special exception application for residential use in an office district.
Is that what was written down in the application?
I'm sorry, I don't have it in front of me.
I
can
need to know.
see if I pull it up here. I'm sorry, I'm not sure that I have the application available to me.
Well, that's not very good.
It's
going to be adjourned anyway. We can talk about this another time.
It's on page 4 on the application. I
Yeah,
can.
I thought,
I can email it
Lucy,
to you
I
now.
thought the problem was, and what's written here is that the notice didn't contain certain relief that you needed. So the notice was deficient. So you have to renotice. That's what we're being told here, to be adjourned pending revised notice. The revised notice did not concern the special use exception. The revised notice concerns an accessory structure setback, which was not noticed previously. So we don't have jurisdiction is what we're saying. So we can't listen to the application without proper notice.
And that would certainly be as to the variance request. And just to clarify, this would be, and I'll follow up with Mr. Wallach as well. This would be, to the extent it's a special exception use, that would be a correct request based upon what they're applying for. I think that the issue that had come up with the board before is that the application, the first 3 pages going into the top of the 4th page, address variance type questions, but seem to be lending themselves to what would be considered for a special exception use. And then under paragraph 16, it mentions the request of a special exception use. But in any event, the variance is, as Mr. Wallach indicated, if that wasn't noticed, the board would only be proceeding as to one portion, and it had been my understanding that it was being put over for the new notice.
Could we go over the part that's properly advertised? The part
I
of
didn't know that it was.
special use instead of the area variance of the accessory structure? Because that it's a total subordinate matter to the special exception use.
I'll leave it to you, Jeff. If we can listen to Lucy speak about the special use exception, if we have the jurisdiction to do so, we can. If not, we'll meet again in 2 weeks anyway.
I have very good presentation. I can explain really well, and I will be very brief of the histories and stuff. So people would not have confusion like coming to the next meeting.
Mr. Chairman, my concern was that I had understood it was being adjourned, so I didn't check what notice was published in the newspaper.
It's public.
Okay, no,
Ready to go.
Lucy, let's just wait 2 weeks. We don't know if we have proper notice. We don't know if we should be hearing this. We don't know if the public has been notified appropriately. So we're just going to adjourn it for 2 weeks. You know, actually, is it 2 weeks or more?
I think it's
more than 2 weeks, right?
I think it's more than 2 weeks. We are meeting twice a month, but I think it's more than 2 weeks.
But is the first one still a work session that we are not allowed to talk?
No,
actually,
Change it.
Yeah, we should highlight that for you. We're moving to eliminate our work sessions, and all of our meetings, Lucy, will be public hearings.
I have down it's Tuesday, the 8th. Is that possible?
Is that enough time to do new posting? No new mailing, but we did posting. Do we need to redo the posting?
I don't think it can't be the 8th, can it?
I'm checking.
I questioned some of this, but I'm not sure. It could be the second Tuesday.
My
No,
invite
I
says the
believe that it's
15th.
February 24th.
Nah, it should be the 15th. We've made that mistake before. It's the Tuesday before the 4th Thursday.
So that's Valentine's Day.
I think it's the 15th, if I'm
It's the
reading this.
15th.
Tuesday, the 15th.
Good.
Jeff, do we have time to have Tuesday, the 15th be a public hearing? That's what we were shifting to, eliminating our work sessions.
I believe we do, Chairman. I'd have to check with Tien Hoso and Jackie Allen for the publication schedules of the newspaper. But
One way or the other, Lucy, let's get your notice completed and we can hopefully hear it on February 15th, Tuesday.
Is that enough time to advertise, do you know?
That's what we're going to check tomorrow.
Okay. So, I guess I can ask Alex tomorrow, right, Alex?
I'll follow up in the office tomorrow. I'm sorry, I don't have the newspaper deadlines with me right now.
Because I don't know if that's enough time for you to do advertisements and stuff. And then we have to redo the mailing. Do we need to, Mr. Blinkoff?
You would certainly, as to the variance, if that wasn't previously done. If you had already done the mailings for the special use exception, you would not need to redo those, but for the variance, it would need to be redone.
Okay. All right.
And we'll see you in a couple of weeks. I'm gonna motion to close the public hearing Thursday.
Well, Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
I just want, is there then a motion to put this over to the next meeting of the board? I don't think there was a formal motion. On this
Because I didn't think we had jurisdiction,
would
so. Whatever motion you think is appropriate, Jeffrey, will.
I would just suggest that the record's clear if there could be a motion before the board that this application, this pending application, be put over to the next public hearing on February 15th.
Okay, so we'll motion to hold case number 3127 over to the next public hearing on Tuesday, February 15th. Can I have a second?
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
But
Hi.
can we just go back to this? Because I have something from Kat Styler that says February 8th, 2022.
Yeah, it's the 15th. We've come
I
across.
know, I
this
questioned
before.
it and I was dismissed. I asked her,
Yeah,
so I'm just saying.
So the hearing is triggered by when the Thursday public hearing.
So it's 10 days before that?
Exactly. It's not the second Tuesday. It's the Tuesday before the public hearing. which is
Okay, well,
on the-
somehow that's in there. It doesn't
Right.
matter.
It's definitely
Okay.
the 15th.
Great.
Oh, yeah, I have,
Yeah,
I
Luke,
also have it now as the 8th.
Luke, you were giving me a hard time. Remember this?
Well, Susan, I want to sincerely apologize to you. I shouldn't have made a joke at your expense. It was not professional of me. Really, I'm
I
sincerely
accept your apology.
sorry
but
about
please.
that. Thank you. To me, if we're going to do new dates, it makes sense, I think, to have 2 weeks in between them and not have Tuesday and then roll right into the following Thursday. You
Can't
guys said the
change-
schedule is
There are other,
fairly packed. Yeah.
no, we can't do that.
Yeah. But I have on 2 different calendars, I have 2 different dates. I have the 8th on one and the 15th on another. So we might want to get clarity.
Thank God Alex is here.
Yeah, and I know we
Yeah,
talked about
Alex.
in the office. I know there's some concern about doing 2 hearings on 2 different nights of the week, and I think that's problematic with the way that notice and our deadlines work. So going forward, if there's going to be 2 hearings, we may want to do them on this, have to do them on the same night.
But the calendar doesn't allow it, Alex, because we're not the only people doing meetings.
Sure.
Really,
Yeah, I know,
trying
we'll
to
have
change
work
it.
around.
It's the agenda, if they ever put it up, would tell you exactly when the information was, and they put it up in time, would tell you when the material was required. I mean, really, it's not a secret. It's just that we can't get this information to ourselves, let alone to the public, which is a real downfall. We owe it to the public.
Are you talking about the meeting agendas?
I am.
But I would just suggest if just so that we can clarify the one motion that was pending, if it's February 15th, just so that Ms. Lou is aware. And then I
It
expect. she
appears
would-
to be the 15th, although it's written nowhere.
Okay.
That's like 2.5 weeks.
So Ms. Lou, we'll check on the notice period for you tomorrow and be able to speak to you about that.
Please do let me know.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, so can we motion to close the public hearing?
Oh, hold on 1 second. The homeowner asked if he can do a separate application for the garage and dismiss it from this one.
Well, it's not going to change what happens tonight.
You would have to ask Alex and the
Then it will
building
be just
department.
for the special use variance instead of the, then we don't even ask about the garage, which is a dimensional variance.
I mean, you.
I mean,
you
I think
can
we'd
go-
prefer to see the site as a whole, right?
Yes. This should be discussed in a calmer manner in the light of day in the building department, don't you think?
I think Tim was sick, and then when he came back, he did things in a rush, and he didn't put in the advertisement correctly.
I'm sorry that
Oh.
that happened. but
I
we're
don't
gonna
know, I
get
don't
on
know, but
track.
I don't know, but I do know that making sure that notice is correctly done, Ms. Lu, protects the applicant as well as it protects the village residents. So I do think it will be important to have that correct, to protect your clients as well as the board and the village.
The homeowner is asking, I think he raised his hand or something. I guess he
He did.
just want,
There was-
that's
it's a-
what he want to try to reach you guys.
There was no jurisdiction, so I didn't say
Okay.
anything. He did have his hand up, but you were discussing jurisdiction and I didn't feel like it was important for him to come in. I apologize for that.
Yeah. I guess because the waiting is very long, people get anxious. It's a little bit like competition.
So are we closing the meeting?
I would like to, okay, so let's motion to close the public hearing Thursday, January 27th. Can I have a second?
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.